give me a minute, I can.
All right. I haven't heard from Ryan. I know Heather is not supposed to be here, but have you heard anything?
Haven't heard anything from Ryan Hitchler.
What do you think? Give it a minute. I texted Ryan to see if he's on his way. Oh. He will be missing the first hour.
I can bring him up if you want. I'll take a minute. Okay.
He'll be missing the first hour and then calling in. All right. So with that, I believe we can call to order this March 7th, 2024.
Recording in progress.
I believe we can call to order this March 7th, 2024 meeting of the Home Rule Commission. And before jumping into preliminary matters, just wanted to thank the Superior Youth Leadership Council for hosting me yesterday. It was great talking to so many young individuals about the process that we've been engaged in and let them know about the public hearing and attending any sort of events coming up. With that, I will turn it over to Martin for the roll call.
Hi, good evening, everybody. So Dalton Vallette,
Here.
Mike Foster.
Present.
Clint Folsom.
Here.
Jeff Chu.
Here.
Heather Craycraft is out. Claire Dixon.
Here.
Chris Hansen. Here. Ryan Hitchler. Delayed. And Ryan Welch.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. Now I will open it up to public comment. Individuals are encouraged to make public comment, but please be respectful of the 5-minute time limit in making statements, either in person or virtually. And please be respectful of commissioners' time and town staff time during the meeting itself. Any questions from the public can be asked of the commissioners and town staff before or after the meeting. Do I have any public comment?
My name is Celeste Landry, and I live in Boulder. And I don't think I've actually thanked you all for adding or putting flexibility into the way the charter is written for electing council members in the future. So I appreciate that. And I did send you all an email about a bill that's House Bill 1177, which I'm working on to get proportional representation as an option, which would be great for cities and counties all over Colorado. And it's only an option, so it's not required. That bill will be heard on second reading tomorrow. I don't even know if it's going to make it out of the House, but that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any additional comments in the room? Seeing none. Any virtually? None. Public comment is closed. With that, we can move on to the next item of the agenda, which is a second review, starting with section 3.04. And this is reviewing dual language.
Good evening. So this, we talked about this at the last meeting, and the purpose of these changes was to make it more consistent with the town's practice of allowing, well, particularly with the BOA, town council or trustees to sit on boards and commissions. And so what I did was I actually split it between employees, which is the first line, and the second two lines, which talk about town council members serving on boards or commissions. So I just split it up. So if it's permitted by ordinance or resolution, they're allowed to serve on both. If not, then they're deemed to have resigned their board or commission member position on taking office to the town council. The employee one remained the same though. No differences there. Once you become a town council member, you can no longer be an employee. Any questions on that or comments?
Yeah, I do have a question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for doing that. I guess one of the questions that came up before, and maybe Matt had answered that, I'm just not sure how it fits into there, is obviously the board members sit as well on the Metro District SMD1 board as well. So is that part of their town responsibility as
No, it's a separate legal entity.
a completely separate legal entity?
Yeah.
So that it doesn't, being on a board then is independent, completely independent? Okay.
Yeah, this is, yeah, oh, go ahead, sorry.
So if you think about when you are first elected, you signed some agreements and you're going to be a member of the Urban Renewal Authority. Those are completely separate from the town, and you sit as a separate board.
Okay. So what ties the fact that the town council will be board members of all of those before then, or going forward as well then? If it's not in the charter here that they serve as those roles, then, or does that come up through an ordinance that created those boards or not as a separate legal entity?
So if it's the Metro District for Utilities or the Urban Renewal Authority or the Interchange District, those are all separate entities where the
Right.
board de facto, I think, sits as those. And it's a separate legal thing that's coordinated through the town attorney's office, nothing to do with the charter.
Yeah, the charter couldn't control that because those are separate legal entities. So the charter can't regulate who sits on those other
okay.
districts. So it must be done, I don't know the
That's what I'm
history,
asking.
but it must have been done either through the service plan or some type of ordinance
was.
that was passed or, yeah.
Is there the service plan then, you think, or?
Service plan for the districts.
For the
and I think
districts.
For
Each
the
of the
Urban
districts.
Renewal Authority, they sit as a separate Urban Renewal Authority under that legislation.
Right.
And then the Interchange District is the same.
Okay. Okay, just being sort of, yeah, all these entities are.
You're right, they're very bifurcated, but the
Right, on
town's
purpose.
role is specifically set here. You're exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm assuming the language here says a board or commission member may also serve on the town council. So I'm guessing that means they could not also be on a committee, only a board or commission.
No, I
Something that
got to tell
specifically-
you, like, those words are going to be used in their broadest sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I know,
So
we
it
can
will be
add
any-
committee later,
Yeah.
but like I think I've said before, it covers everything, just because committee isn't there. They're all that same type of entity
Okay.
within the town. So, but if you want to add committee for consistency with the later section.
Probably should.
Do you think we
We can
should?
do
I don't
that.
know.
I think I would be fine with adding committee just for, and then obviously I know we've kind of touched on this a couple of times, but just making that consistent throughout the document itself.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the
Yeah.
meeting, so, okay.
Do we need the word board? I mean,
Well, I was just wondering, because there's the tree board. Is that what that's for?
what?
Well,
There's something
Tree
called
board?
a tree board in the code. And then,
there is a tree board. There's also the board of adjustment.
yeah.
Okay, board, that, thank you. Leave it there. I thought.
And you
I just
never know,
thought we were-
they
yeah.
might change all their names to boards.
Got it, yep.
Just don't get bored of it.
Yeah.
If we're done with this section, I had a comment about section 1, just right above this.
In the same.
So, yeah, 3.04. So in section 1, it's got these ABC options, and I think the intent is to have all of them. So I'm wondering if there shouldn't be a word "and" after the colon on A and B, and then, yeah, delete that "and" because we're done. So
A2, yeah.
should A have an "and"?
No, grammatically, just the and is just after the B.
Okay. Then I'm done. That's it.
Okay?
Any other kind of comments on this section?
Oh, I see. The and got thrown at the end of C
Yeah.
because we deleted one.
All right.
Okay.
With that, we can move down to Article 6.
All right. And I want to, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, 3.13 before we go. And I know this is not up for review, but I just had a question about it.
Let's see here. Sorry.
Town council vacancies, 3.13.
Yes.
Okay.
And the question was about item number 5.
This one?
Yes. So it says a person shall hold office only until a successor chosen by the electors at the next election. So does that mean that if someone in a 4-year position resigned in year 1 of their 4-year term, and they had an appointment made, would that appointed person only essentially serve 1 more year? They were 1 year into, so they would not serve the 4-year term. They would only serve until the next election. Is that what that's saying, and is that our intent?
That's what we said last time, yeah.
Yeah, that's your intent. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But then
Because that person could run, I mean, that person would need to run. If they wanted to continue on, they would need to run in an election. Okay.
But then whoever got elected to that spot would only be a 2-year term. Yes. As
Correct.
opposed to a 4-year term.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm good. Thank you.
Anything else before 6?
No. All right. I think we can go down to 6.
Oh, it doesn't want. All right. So we talked about Louisville's public comment in their charter, 4.10. And after I looked at that, and I looked at their code, and I looked at their rules of procedure to kind of get an idea of what that actually meant and how that fit in here, I felt like I needed further direction in order to make some changes, because their charter doesn't talk about how many readings they have, but their code does, and it's 2. And then they have these rules of procedure, which I sent to you. I apologize, they were missing from your packet. I sent to you this morning, which you may or not have seen. But they have a public comment before discussion, before the council initiated discussion, and then another public comment afterwards, and there's more public comment in there, and then there's a public hearing for every ordinance, and it's a lot of, it's kind of, I gotta be honest, maybe it works for them, but it seemed like a jumbled mess to me. But so, and I guess one of my thoughts is, we have currently under B, if required by law or ordinance, council shall conduct a public hearing on the ordinance. One solution might just be to say public hearings on everything, which I think is the town's current process. And that provides that public comment. And you have public comment under the town's rules of procedure at every meeting as well. So you kind of have both of those covered without Louisville's kind of complicated scheme of what they do. And I guess council could always adopt more public comment rules in their rules of procedure if they wanted to, but putting it in here might just be a little bit too much. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I agree that Louisville's procedure is a little bit more overkill, I think, than is needed. In terms of requiring a public hearing on everything, I thought the public hearing was something that had to be a little more notice, and we had to gavel in to open the public hearing. And I mean, it's a very much more formal process than kind of your garden variety ordinance. I personally don't think a public hearing on every ordinance is necessary. My thought would be in C to add the sentence, after public hearing, if applicable, any discussion, the council shall allow an opportunity for public comment prior to voting. Just add a sentence like that, or add some language like that. Then my other comment was where it says vote to amend, adopt, or reject. I would suggest reversing amend and adopt, because adopt is kind of what most, that's kind of the order of most things, and then amend or reject. So it seems weird to me to have amend be the first thing in the order of operations there.
I'm missing what you're saying. To amend, adopt, or reject?
So adopt, amend,
Adopt,
or
move,
reject.
adopt
So the
first.
order of operations, we typically adopt an ordinance before we would amend an ordinance, so it's just,
No, because typically you make a motion to make a change before the amendment gets adopted. So if an ordinance comes forward, you would make a motion to say, well, actually, we don't want to do that. We'd want to change section whatever. We'd want to amend it before it gets voted on. It's not amending it after the fact, it's amending it during the review process. That's how I interpret
I
it.
gotta tell you, with that or, it doesn't really matter what the or, you could put
Okay.
reject first if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't, legally, it doesn't matter, but it's a matter of preference, so whatever you
Okay.
guys want.
I think you were thinking amend as in like, it was already approved and now you're trying to amend an ordinance so that.
Right.
Right. I was,
Okay.
yeah, so again, it's just interpretation.
Okay, I'm fine leaving it as it was, if that's, yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree with you on the, as far as like the public comment. I think as long as somewhere in here it says that before an ordinance is voted upon, that there shall be an opportunity for public comment. I mean, that's what we want to guarantee. And you can talk about the specific procedures can follow by an ordinance, which is basically what Louisville did effectively, right? They created a very long procedure. We can have a long or short procedure, it doesn't really matter, but there should be an opportunity for the public to be able to speak before any ordinance gets voted upon.
Yeah, so with that, now that I'm looking at this further, actually, I think the note about the public comment would probably be more applicable in A.
A separate one, yeah. It's not part of, yeah.
Because I know, at least I remember from my little cheat sheet on public hearings, there was a specific place where public comment was always to be handled in public hearings. But I think what we're really after here is making sure that there is an opportunity for a public comment in every ordinance.
Yes.
Or in every, yeah.
Is it
So-
every ordinance or every one that doesn't have a public hearing?
I think it's any
every-
ordinance, right? Public hearing has it baked in, like you said.
Okay, okay.
Yes, public hearing has it kind of baked in, but the purpose is for every ordinance to have an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, I think I understand where you're going now.
So it could be a
Okay.
separate bullet for all we care at that point in
Okay,
time.
and the public hearing could serve that purpose.
Correct.
Got it, okay.
So, yeah, so this is a list, an order of operation procedure as opposed to all these things shall happen kind of a list in this section. So it's a little bit confusing whether it fits in there or whether it has to go somewhere else, right?
And I think you said A, right? I think maybe A might be a better place for it.
Yes.
If everyone agrees. Okay.
Yeah. Or between A and B, create a whole new section. Any ordinance shall have an opportunity for public.
Okay. Okay. Oh, anything else on
Yep.
that?
Nothing. Any other additional comments? Article 6.
Paragraph D, the second paragraph is confusing to me. It says, once an option of an additional reading has been exercised by a council member or mayor, may not be exercised by another council member or mayor. What does that mean it can't go to a third reading? Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
But unless there's a unanimous decision that they want it to another, isn't that what the
Well,
last
that's more of a
sentence meant?
continuance, not a whole nother, like,
It's not another
yeah,
reading.
they would have to act to continue it
Oh,
together.
I see, to
Yep.
continue the ordinance.
But like, you couldn't have 7 readings as you
People.
went through council.
I see.
Okay.
So
What does
that
it-
would be a continuation of a public hearing as
Like-
opposed to 2 public hearings.
Yeah, so I think the concept is like, so one member can cause a second reading, but you don't want that to be extended beyond that second reading. But if the council as a body approves to keep continuing it, that's fine.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
would the council member then, that wants to have the second reading, does it have to be voted on, or just because they say, I want a second reading, it has to happen?
It has, the way this reads, I would say it has to happen.
And then the last sentence, I think, addresses your question, Ryan. It says that nothing in this section shall limit the council's authority to continue the ordinance by a majority vote. So if another person says, I want to continue it to a third reading, then there would need to be a vote to do that.
Right.
And the likelihood in your scenario would be more likely, a council member says, well, I think we should have a second reading on this, and they'd probably vote on that to have a second reading, but it wouldn't be required, is my guess. So.
Well, there's a Broncos game tonight and no one's here, and everyone should be here, so let's do another reading in 2 weeks, okay? Through the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Super Bowl. Wait, that's Sunday. True.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Go down to Article 10.
So I can't remember, we struck out this idea that there must be voter approval for any new tax or increase or mill levy above the prior year. Did we completely take that out?
Yeah, so it repeats Tabor. That's what we had
I
talked
see,
about.
okay.
And so there was direction to use severance as very simple language.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so you'd still, this doesn't change Tabor.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Any additional kind of questions, comments on taxation? All right, Article 11.
So before we dive into that, it's my understanding you did not receive the referendum initiative comparison chart in your packet. Is that, did you, I think Jeff has seen it, but looks like this.
I have not
I
seen.
did not.
No.
I saw it when Martin flashed it.
All right, so this
I
is
did
a
not see
very extensive comparison chart for referendum and initiative comparison to state law. And then commentary, my commentary down the side. So I guess my question to you is, do you want to hold off on doing this
Yes.
until you have a chance to look
Yeah,
at it?
please.
That's what I figured. I apologize. I just learned when I walked in.
We have the
tonight,
time to do
so.
it, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for that. I didn't realize I didn't go out with your packet, so it was just an oversight. Thank you for your patience.
I do have a question, though.
You made me feel like I was
generally
crazy, Martin.
in this area,
Everybody got it but you.
as a statutory town, what happens in this area? Is there recourse for recall as a statutory town, or is this a new power for a home rule?
Oh, no,
Charter.
recall, all of these powers, the statutory town, Superior has now.
Okay, we have it now, so this isn't
Yeah,
new.
and I think when you get a chance to look at this, you'll see there isn't a whole lot of difference between what's in the charter and what's in state law. There's little teeny tweaks and things like that. But there's only one provision that's like, doesn't exist in state law. But it's generally, and I'm guessing the reason that it is in here is to make it easier for citizens to utilize all these three things, rather than having to dig through the Constitution and the statute and all that. So that's just my guess, but, yeah.
Without seeing the table you're about to hand out or share with us, I know last meeting we talked about holding referendums on capital projects. So I don't know if that's addressed in your matrix.
It is addressed in there. Yeah, I referred
hold
to
off on that?
it,
Okay.
I referred to it in my notes. So, and Martin and I were talking about this. So Superior's budget uses the phrases capital improvement programs and capital projects and capital facilities and those kinds of things. And Martin can probably talk to this better than I can, but it's certainly not unusual the way that Superior does things is those are often in the budget, you know, at the end of the year for the next year. The budget is approved by ordinance, so you have that, but ordinance is addressing budget. Budgets are legislative under Colorado law. But when a capital program actually, or capital improvement program, or whatever you want to call it, comes back to the board to actually undertake, it's coming through as contracts and resolutions and that kind of thing. So it's not coming through as an ordinance anymore. And that's pretty standard. I don't have any clients that approve separate capital programs by ordinance. It would all be linked to a budget or a budget amendment for something like that. So I will say while I think it's, capital, these aren't defined under law as being legislative, which is what you have to be to refer something. To do a referendum, it has to be legislative in nature. It can't be administrative and it can't be quasi-judicial. So, I think it's fine to leave this in there like that. I've talked to Martin a little bit about expanding the language to say capital improvement programs or capital improvement, something a little broader. And I'll get to why in a minute, but, because that's the terms that Superior uses. But I think it's unlikely that you'd ever have an ordinance approving one of these things in and of itself as a standby ordinance. So, yeah. And we talked a little bit about the definition of that term last time, I believe.
For the lack thereof, right?
Yeah.
And let's see, hold on.
And while you're searching for that, I'll just say, my recollection was that there was some discussion from the committee about potentially including capital improvement projects as part of a referendum, and after sleeping on that for the last couple of weeks, I think we should
You should what?
go in a different direction.
Oh, okay.
Because I really think that having the town approve a capital project through the budget process, only to have that referendum, would really handcuff the town's ability to implement capital projects like repaving Rock Creek Parkway. I mean, that was a contentious issue, and if there were a referendum, somebody could have put in a referendum because they wanted 1 lane instead of 2. And I really think that that would hamstring the town's ability to manage capital projects and get budgets adopted and provide services to the town. So that's,
So, but capital program is in another section of the draft charter there. So it does kind of talk about what it is, and this sentence, it's not much, but this sentence links a lot to what Superior's practice is in its capital improvement budgeting process. It just doesn't quite use the exact term.
Can we look at the comparison chart and do what we said, right? Take a look at it, and so we can come back
Yeah.
and revisit this after we've seen the.
Yeah, so, this isn't discussed much in there, but these references are in there.
I will ask one more thing that you just mentioned, which relationship, which I liked. Can you just, that referendum is legislative in nature and not administrative? Can you, okay, I had not heard, that's a good way to describe it, I guess.
Yeah,
So that's by state law then?
Yeah, so it's the rule for both initiated ordinances and referendums. They have to be associated with municipal legislation. They cannot be administrative. So the town manager's contract is administrative. But, you know, in a lot of stuff that the board would do would be administrative and not subject to referendum. So they're very specific as to what they are.
Okay. That's a take I hadn't heard from Flies. Okay.
And I have that chart. I'll send it to you now, just
Okay.
so you have it.
And is everyone else all right with just kind of tabling technical second reading of Article 11 till next time?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, with that, we can jump down to Article 12.
Do we want to just do the second reading with respect to petitions and all that other stuff? Make sure no one has anything else with respect to that? Because there's the whole process.
Yeah, I would
for that.
do all of Article 11 on the second reading for
Okay.
next. Yeah.
Could wait then.
Okay.
Okay, so the section needs some work, I guess is what I'll say. So I think Matt shared with you some open space materials. And just to kind of preface things, my understanding, particularly on the ballot question and the ballot questions language, is that the board in the past has set priorities regarding natural open space and developed open space, and what those mean, and using the land use code's definition of those to determine how the money's going to be spent. And so I think when we were talking last time about, you know, guardrails or defining what open space was under the ballot question in the charter, I think that's been the town's practice. That is that the board has had that flexibility to kind of define that based upon its code. And so that's one thing that we gained from looking at that stuff. So I think what I need guidance from you on is what do you really want this section to look like moving forward? We had talked about the 3 things I have listed in my comments: the core, the guardrails on the ballot question, and the committee. But I wanted to bring it back because I really struggled with trying to figure out exactly what to write for that. So, and I think Claire provided something you had as well to the commission today.
Yeah,
So I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that.
Well, I just tried to organize it in a way that made sense because we're kind of blending some things from Erie and some things from Boulder, and so I think at this point it's kind of thrown in there. So I think my goal was just to kind of organize it into a sequence that sort of made sense. So the definition that I put in there was just something taken from Boulder, but not something that I think we should necessarily use. It was just the idea that maybe we start with a definition and then some of the things that we think, the town should be doing, like keeping the list of vacant land. We talked about having a committee, as long as there is a fund, to make recommendations about that fund. And then, I think there was one other thing.
Disposal of open space at the end. Disposal of open space.
Yeah, so I moved that to the end. I thought that made more sense to be at the very end. So then we'd have purchase, manage, dispose of, so kind of the life cycle, maybe.
Yeah, I think trying to figure out exactly what we want in this section is really the key there. I think originally part of our discussion, which we saw from Erie, was kind of the core values of preserving open space and all that. It sounded like what I heard from most people is that people wanted to get away from that. And if that's the direction, well, that's fine. I think we've kind of, this has become a very procedural charter as opposed to a visionary charter,
Right.
For good or bad. So I think when I think about open space in this context, and people talk about longevity, and we basically are fortunate that we didn't think about putting a sunset criteria on our open space tax when we had it. So we have this fund that's going to build forever. So I think this section really should address, to a large extent, the monies and the lands that are coming in from that specifically. Granted, there's other ways we can get open space. There's other ways we can dispose of other open space, but fundamentally there is a designation of open space that's come from this open space tax that we've all put out there. So
Yeah, but I mean, there's been some gifted open space that's
Right.
prime that wouldn't fall into that category, though. So
exactly.
This definition I thought was good that Claire wrote in here, but I really struggle with what we're trying to convey here, right? We're trying to convey core values, but this document is meant to limit powers of a town government, right? So what, I listened, I know I missed the last meeting, I watched it a couple times, and I tended to agree, right, that the three bullets you have up here was kind of what we all what conversation landed on. Core values, right, which could be covered in the preamble, right, because you're not actually directing the town to do anything, right? You're just saying, this is a core value of our town, we value this is part of how we looked at this charter, right? There's the sale, right? Because there was discussion in that meeting that there actually was language about the sale, but I haven't found any language about protecting the sale of open space. It's not in the ballot language that was passed, right? That the language in there doesn't talk about prohibiting sale of that land. So I don't know that there's any protection right now on selling open space land. I mean, I can read the.
I have to think about whether, if you buy open space with a certain tax, whether you, with the voter-approved tax that way, whether you can just dispose of it.
But disposing of open space would likely require an ordinance or a public hearing, at which point the community would come out and make their voice and opinion heard on whether or not that's something they want to see happen.
But right now, I don't know if there's any protection, right? I don't know that has to happen, and that would be good to find out, because I just don't know. I couldn't find anything.
I think Martin's got an opinion.
Well, just to recap, I think we talked about this, 3 or 4 or 5 meetings ago. The whenever a real estate transaction happens with the board, it's a hearing item that comes to the board. Any real estate, whether it's purchasing, conveying, doing anything. So any real estate transaction has to be approved by the board, number one. And then the question about whether or not it can be done unilaterally. If the open space tax fund is used to pay for something, the open space tax fund would have to be made whole again by the general fund if it were ever to be conveyed, or if the purpose of that property were to be changed. So if a piece of property is no longer used as open space fund can't be used to honor that obligation or to encumber that property. So you'd have to make a couple of things whole first before it could happen, but it could happen, yes.
And if it got sold, the money would have to go back into that fund as well, whatever the proceeds would be.
Or whatever amount. If it was a different amount, if it was bought for $1 million and sold for $500,000, the general fund would have to make up that $500,000. The open space fund always has to be made whole.
Okay, but if it goes for $5 million,
Then the open space fund has $4 million more.
right. So it's above and beyond, right, has to cover. the-
Open Space Fund is independent. It's its own entity.
Right, but it has to make up the difference, or all the proceeds, if it's above what the purchase price was, would all go to the, so you couldn't benefit, the general fund couldn't benefit from the selling of a piece of property because it's worth more now.
Either way. Yeah, it could, if the general fund, if Open Space Fund was used to fund a purchase and then no longer is, if a piece of property is no longer open space, the general fund has to make that up because the open space fund, the taxpayer-funded
Exactly.
revenue for that can never be taken at the expense.
Right, exactly. So it's part of it.
But there's still, so it still could be done by ordinance. So there could be a public hearing, an ordinance, and they could sell open space land. They could sell Coyote Ridge or anything else, right? There's no, Erie's language had to be by voter
Yeah.
approval to sell open space land. So the question is, do we want more restraint here on how open space could be disposed of? Is, I guess, a question for the group.
That's actually what, the one comment I have on here that I was thinking about is that it struck me that, approval, it was based on the majority of committee members. And I thought that that's odd if you've got a massive piece of open space that it comes down to 3 people choosing to sell it. And I don't think that's right. Even though we don't have to have voter approval to buy the land with open space funds, I think to sell a big piece, I think we do.
Well, in this language, it's not a done deal, just if you have a majority of the people on the committee that approve, then it goes to a 60-day waiting period in which gives any resident the opportunity to go through the referendum process.
Yeah, I saw that and I thought about that for a second, but then that puts more of a burden on the
does.
community
But here's the thing.
and less protection.
That's outside the powers of an advisory committee. They don't get to make that decision. They get to make a recommendation to the board, right? That's an advisory committee. That's like cut and dry. They don't have that power to vote on something that's binding for the town.
And if I can.
If I understand that right.
I think in the what Claire sent, I think it has, step 1 is the affirmative vote of the majority of members of the committee. And then it doesn't say this, but then the next paragraph goes on to talk about city council's approval of the disposal.
Right.
So it sounds like
It's not
that's
an
step, then it
approval.
goes on. So you can't even get it out of committee to the governing body. That's kind of my interpretation. I'm reading between the lines there, but you can't get it out of the committee if you don't have a majority
Okay,
affirmative
so
vote.
it could be, maybe the way to say that would be per recommendation of the Open Space Committee, because recommendation requires a majority vote within the committee would be, I read that as it was their, kind of their,
It does,
power.
yeah, until you read that second paragraph and then it indicates, because then that's when the 60-day waiting period is triggered.
Clint, are you, well, both of you for that matter, are you advocating that, okay, so if it's not the committee, then the council can, with 4 votes, also dispose of it? Or are you thinking more of an election?
I'm not, and I think I'm surprised by myself, by my thoughts on this, is that I don't think that it should be the council's choice to sell a large parcel of open space, because it seems like this committee, when we were talking that, and especially Claire, that open space was such a valuable thing to this town. And if it is such a valuable thing to this town, we should make it a little bit harder for it to be disposed of. And so that's why I thought maybe it should go to the voters if we want to sell this off.
Yeah, I mean, I think going to this process was a little bit of a concession because I perceived that having a vote was harder than going through this process.
This is definitely easier, but my problem is you're putting a lot of potential power in the hands of an appointed body that, you know, they're not elected. I mean, they're just appointed by the board to be on this role of open space committee, and that I'd almost rather see a vote of the people than a vote of 3 people that that a board could have stacked or something. I mean, it's.
That's my position, Clint,
Yeah,
is that I
yeah.
thought that it was, I think it's good to have the recommendation of the committee.
Absolutely,
And then
absolutely.
the
Recommendation,
board
yes,
say,
but
yes, we want to send this to the voters to get approval to sell this, but I think to have even, 7 on the board, plus 3 committee members or 4 committee members, to make that decision to sell a big parcel of property to me, open space, which is so valued to the town, this kind of struck
No.
me as wrong.
I didn't read this as saying the Open Space Committee has the final word, but if.
And that doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
I think that's good. They're making the recommendation.
Yeah,
The final word goes to the voters.
Yeah, I'm totally fine going back to going to the voters. If that's how we want to go.
What if,
However,
There's always a big but.
well, I think you don't want to tie both hands behind your back either. I mean, it's, when we say a large, I think we could all agree, a large amount of property, hundreds of acres, yeah, you probably would not want that to be disposed of without a vote of the people. But what about a third of an acre to accomplish some project or trade for, to trade this or move things around? I think that's where voter approval is not a good thing, because that's more of a management function of the town to be able to, better utilize the space. And I don't know what the magic numbers are, what the minimums are, but that's my concern, is that if we say selling any of it is subject to voter approval, I think that
Can I
could be a
add one
problem.
thing before? There's one charter that we read that had something in there about half an acre. If it was half an acre or less of open space, the council had authority to do that. And I forget which one. Was it in Erie, or which one was that in?
Maybe Eagle.
It wasn't Erie.
Might have been
Um,
Eagle.
I think it was Eagle.
So, okay, so I mean, I appreciate that's, putting a number on it is one way to go. I mean, I guess I look at it, and I think you brought this up at the very beginning, right? We have open space, which is broad. It almost feels like this section needs to say, we're going to talk about open space, and we really divide it into two categories. We have a fund, and there's a designation of open space that has been procured via this fund, and that has a certain set of rules behind it. And one of those would be that you can't dispose of the open space without a vote of the public. You can have these processes to go through there. And then there's another, I don't know what we're going to call the different open spaces, right? But then there's another classification of open space, which we may have gotten as donations from developers. We may have gotten it as donations from other landowners or something. There's other ways that we can acquire, that we get open space. Some of it that doesn't fall from the tax fund that everyone voted on, and that can be handled in a different manner. And so there's really is, I mean, just the unique nature of having the open space fund creates effectively two different types of open space for us, independent of saying one's natural or developed or all that stuff, right? I mean, that all of those exist for both classifications, but it's where the funds came from, or where the open space came from. And so really the one that kind of gets me concerned is just the disposal of these large parcels, which mostly have come from the open space tax. A third of an acre that someone donated and whatever,
Well,
that's
but
almost
here's the scenario though. What if a third of an acre could be carved out of Coyote Ridge to enable, maybe a resident got a third of an acre and they would donate back 10 acres, right? That's I think more what Chris was saying, where, there may be pieces like that where it's in the benefit of the town, but that doesn't need to go to a vote.
So I think the example I heard from Jeff was the town center, that there was a required amount of space that had to be, is it parks, or was there open space requirements?
Yeah, the PD for any project that the board sees has a specific dedication for open space.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's done for a reason. That's done so we don't have this urban sprawl, or as much of an urban sprawl. And so I don't know. I think we protect all of it, except if we want to have, like Clint said, maybe it's a half an acre or whatever that amount is. We say anything under that, the town council
and I
has
believe
discretion.
that was part of the discussion last time with the voter kind of hesitancy at first, which is how we kind of came up with the current language. But in Eagle's charter, I found that exact passage. They said disposal of less than 1/2 of an acre of land, even if designated as a park or an open space area, shall not require voter approval, provided that the council makes an express finding that use of the land after disposal will be for a public purpose. And I think,
Yeah, so we talked about that one back in Article 1. It's down there. That whole part is on the side there.
So back to your point and it's well taken, that can you take 100 acre, not 100 acre, 10 acre parcel of open space and say, we're going to just take a half acre of that and sell it? And I would say, no, that you couldn't do that. But if there was a half acre that was purchased or a half acre that was donated, then that could qualify.
So taking one and replacing it with another or more.
So I think I heard, Jake, should I clarify? So you're saying the size of the parcel versus the carving out of the parcel?
The size of the parcel that was either purchased or donated
Originally.
has to be half acre or whatever that number is.
Okay, I interpreted that as different what you said. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. Because now you're limiting it to large parcels. I was interpreting, and maybe you were saying this, that even if it was a 10-acre parcel, you could carve out half acre at a time and do whatever you wanted to. I mean,
So
that's-
could we build a rec center on Coyote Ridge? So I would say, no, you couldn't. It has to be limited to that parcel that in how it was originally acquired by the town.
So
And by
Jeff,
size.
By
So
size,
source
that's what I mean, by
and
size. Yeah, so that,
Oh, okay.
so in terms of this source question, I see where you're going with that, but I think once something becomes open space, I don't think the public really cares where the money came from. I think they care that it's open space. And so to me, whether it was purchased with general fund dollars, donated by the neighbor, or by the open space fund, to me, it's all the same.
If something,
So I would, I'm sorry, go ahead.
if
please.
something was donated, not purchased with the open space fund, and then later was sold, would the money go back into the open space fund, even if it's not where it came from?
Nope.
Only if it was paid for by the open space fund.
So it would
So
not
if there's a public
necessarily.
land dedication that
Okay.
wasn't paid
So
for
there
with the
are
open space fund.
certain
we
rules
would-
and restrictions that apply to those kind of lands that don't apply to the others.
So if this commission wants to put the restrictions on there across the board for open space, I'm fine with that. But the term open space, I welcome that, believe me. I was looking at more as the protection from the fund versus some of these other places that we get open space. The requirement for open space in any development, well, that can be, 100 square feet of a tree sitting in a parking lot is counted as open space. Well, I don't know if that's completely true, but the definition of open space when it comes to within a parking lot and stuff is very different than kind of the open space that's been bought from some of the funds. So if the board wants to say, hey, no one can do that, I'm happy for the protections of that. But I think if the board were to say, oh, well, we get to a point where it's so difficult to get rid of this, it's untenable, they should be able to sell anything, then I'd go back and say, hey, well, you know what? The money, the open space that's being bought from the fund needs to be protected at a minimum, from my
So
perspective.
more protections on,
But if you put more protections on the rest of it, that's fine. But I just feel
Another way to classify it is
Yeah.
by zoning, because usually when we buy something, it gets zoned open space natural as soon as possible. So that's just another consideration on how we slice what is open space.
okay, right.
But zoning can be changed.
What's that?
Zoning can be changed.
Well, that's true.
Right.
I mean, but it was interesting because Erie's language had, you couldn't change the zoning without a vote either.
Okay.
And that was problematic in itself,
Yeah.
right? Because if you were trying to take something residential to open space natural, that didn't make sense to have a vote. It was more intended going from open space natural to commercial or residential.
Yes. I think the half acre figure provides the necessary flexibility. I mean, that's a pretty big chunk of land, and I mean, when you're in the big scheme of things, so I would feel comfortable with that half acre or less. The board can do without a vote. Above that, a vote for all open space. And because I think when you start carving out, well, what was purchased by what and what was donated, it just gets too confusing, too hard to track. And there's probably open space that the town has now that who knows where it came from. It's or the original source. And so it becomes, I think, a real bear to track that.
So I absolutely love it, as I said, right? I think you're taking the step beyond where I thought you would take the step. But I think the real question then comes logistically: what is open space at that point in time? Is the town 9 open space?
Is what, I'm sorry?
Is the town 9 open space?
No, it's park.
Okay.
It was dedicated with the marketplace when it was first developed. It was part of, the PD. So if the board approves through a hearing, a zoning to build, whether it's the marketplace or to zone
Right.
CenturyLink, goes back through a hearing process to rezone it, which is subject to repeal
Referendum
or referendum,
and repeal.
and then potentially repeal.
And did we
But
just?
Clint is exactly right. So whenever we receive an asset and pay for it through whether it's a general fund or for any fund, that asset is tracked separately. And so if something is ever paid for with an open space fund, we will know it now and always.
Okay, so that's not a problem, right? Knowing where it's coming from.
Dalton, do you still have the language up from Eagle?
Yep.
What that says?
It's up on your screen,
Oh.
too.
Yeah.
It's on the side,
Oh,
Oh, I can't.
if you can read that.
No.
No.
Yeah, want me to read it?
If you,
I can read it again. The disposal of less than 1/2 acre of land, even if designated as a park or open space area, shall not require voter approval, provided that the council makes an express finding that use of the land after disposal will be for public purpose.
so somewhere else then it must say any disposal of land requires voter approval then.
And what does it mean for public purpose? What kind of restrictions does that place on that?
Public purpose could be a right-of-way, road, affordable housing, public affordable housing, in my opinion. I mean,
There's pretty wide latitude on what that might mean.
Yeah.
That's
I
very
think the
wide.
intent is to keep it in the public use and not sell it off for
And
private
not-
development.
So, yeah.
Now we're into eminent domain reasons.
does that, but that doesn't protect from taking a 1/2 acre from a larger parcel of open space?
Doesn't seem like it now. At least in my interpretation and reading. Would that be yours?
That speaks nothing of subdividing out.
Yeah, so how can you have that language address what we want, what we're talking about, where they can't carve it out? It has to be, that's the original parcel.
You'd have to put
have to say
something
just-
like that in
Yeah.
there, that the 1/2 acre couldn't be created, through a subdivision process.
It would have to be
basically.
of parcels of less than 1/2 of an acre.
half acre of the original purchase parcel or something like that.
Oh, so are all our open space properties, are they individual parcels? So Coyote Ridge is one whole parcel?
Yep.
Yeah, every piece of property the town has annexed has a subdivision that governs it.
Oh, okay.
What I'm trying to look up right now, though, is the town just bought property along the creek in the last
I was
year.
gonna ask that, yeah.
And those might be under half, one of those might be under 1/2 acre, though. So that might,
A few of them are.
But those were
a
purchased.
few of them
oh,
are, right? They were more like 1/3 of an acre
Those
or
are
something.
stormwater. Aren't those through stormwater? They're not really open space, are they?
They are
They are open
designated open
space.
Were they were purchased with
But
open
part of the
space funds?
benefit of the purchase is
Yeah, so in that
drainage
case,
waiver.
that wouldn't bother me if it was purchased with open space funds and those funds go back into that account and then the town is gonna use that for what they
But
feel.
just back to the vote, like if that could be disposed of without a vote, right? Because that's a key piece of property along the creek.
But if it's being used for stormwater, I would argue that that's a public purpose.
Well,
Is it in the floodplain?
I mean, and
Most
that's.
of it is. Lots of it is, but not all of it.
There you go.
But there,
Can you
but
even
there,
do it
it's
now?
not being sold. Like that was part of that deal, was that Mile High Flood District is reimbursing the town for the percentage of those properties that are in the flood district. But the town's still gonna own it.
Right, but if for some reason somebody bought that, I mean, can you even build in a flood zone these days?
Not in the floodplain, like that's why one of
You
those
can,
lots.
but it's very difficult.
Get a variance.
expensive,
Goes to the
yeah.
Board of Adjustments.
Yeah, good.
Someone built a.
But then
someone built a
if
home
the
and
phrase for
built it
public
that way.
purposes in it, then it's always going to have to be for a public purpose if the open space fund pays for it.
Right.
So there's a backstop there regardless.
Say it again, Martin?
If it says the land for disposal is for a public purpose, couldn't sell it to somebody to build a house on it. There's no way you could prevent somebody from using it for a public purpose.
Well, yeah, I mean, public purpose, as someone said here, could be, someone mentioned affordable housing or something like that, but, so that could build a house on it, but,
You couldn't build affordable housing on 1/2 an acre.
well.
Maybe you could
Tiny
build one
house?
tiny home, but, yeah, I guess.
Half an
I'm still
acre?
out.
Yeah.
Hey, we talked about
Anyway,
Stories.
30 DUs per acre. We
I
used to
think
talk
we're
about.
close here though, right? I think
Yeah.
we've got
I,
close on the language, we just need to wrap this up.
yeah, I would say as far as kind of to Claire's original point, just kind of organization of this, I do kind of like the idea of kind of breaking it down. It would be a little different from some of the other charters that at least I've reviewed, but just kind of having designation, purchase, disposal, three kind of those
Yeah.
key sections, and then maybe, I don't know, right now, as Claire, you've written it, it's a definition. I think right now there's a purpose, but kind of like an introductory kind of section on the intent in defining open space. I think that would be good. But what is kind of everyone else's thoughts kind of from an organizational structure section for Article 12?
a fan of keeping it more simple than a complex recipe per se. But I like the concept of the organization, but I really like the language of Eagle because I think it addresses the concerns that we have, sans the splitting out parcels or selling off parcels in half-acre chunks. So using the Eagle content, but maybe breaking it out into the 3 buckets that we've talked about, if there's a way of doing that.
Could the language from the Eagle replace everything we have here for disposal then? Is that what we're wanting to do? And then add in a line that you can't subdivide a parcel?
Yeah, so this was, I put boulders in there. And
Yeah.
So we would take all of that out, just
Yeah.
out, and put
Put eagles instead.
And
That's where I'm leaning.
Didn't
at this
Eagles
point.
have something in chapter 1 about this specifically?
Yeah.
Also?
yeah.
Just probably want to capture some of that.
Now, Claire, I appreciate you putting together this, this organization. I like the breaking it up in the different orders that you created.
And it's easy to read, too.
Yeah, so this was actually, Eagle, I don't know that it has an open space, but that whole section was up in.
That's from
Yeah.
the beginning, yeah.
Yeah, which is what I put on your agenda, that we would talk about that section G up there in 1, where Eagle's language was, this one. Because you've got, we'll talk about it in a minute too, I think at the beginning of Article 13, it talks about this again. I'm not sure why it appears so many times. But yeah, Eagle's language was up front. This is up front in their charter and not down in an open space section. So you have the option of, leaving that in there and saying subject to, other provisions of this charter, and putting that down in your open space section where everything else is.
I mean, one reason to put it here is it just raises the visibility of it, right? People will read this, but they may not read all the way down, right? So it reinforces the key, like its core principle of ours.
And this section isn't specifically to open space. This is a bit broader, which is why I'm wondering if it would be good, because then we can also detail that half-acre option. So we can kind of utilize language a little bit more through an open space lens in the below section.
But it is specific to, it doesn't say.
If we change
like
in its current form.
Okay.
I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, this,
Yeah.
I think Dalton's point is this is very general, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So Dalton, you're saying, don't go into real detail here on the open space, do it in the open space.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
maybe just
tend to
mention
agree
with
with
the
that.
exception of
Per this charter.
the,
right?
yeah, per this charter.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it, something along those lines, yeah.
Because this has become an important thing for us, so why not make it its own section and, yeah.
Yeah.
So did we land on using the definition section that you had drafted, Claire?
You know what, I didn't it's really
Or-
just taken from the Boulder Charter, so if
Okay.
we want
Yeah,
to
so we can-
rewrite that,
My
there may be a
comment.
better definition out there.
My comment about that is it references lands purchased with the sales and use tax, but it didn't reference, what about stuff that's already owned or wasn't purchased with that or donated? I think if we're going to define it, it needs to
We need a
be a little
broader
broader and inclusive, yeah.
Well, I think that really goes to the question, is there a reason to make a distinction between where the open space funds have come or not? I think,
It sounds like the main distinction is what happens if you sell it to the proceeds,
well, yeah.
or is there something else?
Well, I think the only other one is, again, the open space funds can be used for management, maintenance of other things of those same open space properties, but they could not be used for other open space properties that were donated or otherwise received.
Oh.
Right, because those funds, again, are,
Well, that's where I'm wondering if, right now, we have this definition section from Boulder. Would it be prudent to detail a little bit more? I don't know if we need to call it definition or purpose, intent, just kind of something broad, and then we go into these kind of 3 buckets.
Okay, just to clarify, and correct me if I'm wrong, the maintenance portion of the sales tax can be used for open space, which wasn't necessarily purchased through the open space fund. So if you had open space previously that you got, or some other avenue it came to you, the town could use those open space
So-
funds to maintain that property.
Here's a great
Is that-
example. So after the flood came through here,
Okay.
the creek here or right down through here had to be reconstructed, and that all came out of, or a lot of that came out of the open space fund. And it was, the fund language was pretty generic. And so everyone, even, legal looked at it, felt comfortable with it. So yeah, I would say that's absolutely
Yeah, I just wanted to
allowed and
clarify,
done.
Yeah.
There's other trails that have been built, not even really on widely open space, connecting to open space, but under the same principle.
Right, so. I just
Connecting
wanted
is
to
that key, just like you're thinking about the language in the ordinance itself, or when the ballot measure was approved, it didn't delineate maintenance just for those properties, maintenance of open space, the classified open space, zoned open space. Yeah, you're exactly right, Ryan.
Were those funds reimbursed by the federal government?
A lot of it was. FEMA is a different topic for a different commission.
Yeah, that was just a sidebar question. So we used open space funds to fix it after the flood, but then that was reimbursed and put back in the open space fund by the Fed?
Oh, you're right, it was put back. I think you're right, I think it was borrowed.
Yeah.
Do we,
Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Just a question.
well, I don't know, you don't want to go down it, but it's a valid question, right? Is where are these funds being used for? This goes back to Juanita's, a park is open, therefore we should go build ball fields on it and use the open space funds. This is.
I just don't know that that's the place belongs in the charter, right?
But that is the guidelines, and the charter is the guardrails for setting what these things can be used for, right?
Well, your ballot question.
No, the ballot.
That's where your guardrails are.
Yeah, the ballot defined this. We shouldn't be changing anything that's in the, should we be making the ballot language more restrictive? I don't think that's our place.
So you have to look in, I think there's the interpretation of how you look at the ballot language, and you talk about maintenance, where the commas are. I'd have to read it again.
So I think anything you put in there could be seen as limiting the ballot language. Anyway, I don't know.
Well, are we still working on our definition?
I don't know if we've even kind of gone into that. I would say kind of just everyone's kind of consensus. Does it seem like it's all right kind of organizing it into these maybe 4 kind of key sections, open space sections, and then we can get into the actual definition and the wordsmithing of it just from a high level organizational standpoint. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Just to be clear, are we taking Eagle's language or are we working off of Claire's
I think
language?
we are going to be using this
Yeah.
instead of the language under disposal.
Claire's structure,
Structure, I
Eagle's
didn't really write
language
it,
Yeah.
Disposal.
is how I'm interpreting the
Yeah.
conversation.
For disposal.
Eagle's language for the disposal.
I think
For
you've got this,
disposal.
But there's a lot of other language in Claire's that needs to be
Right.
discussed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's where I wanted to see,
Right.
is it all right structurally? Because right now we have this section,
Sure.
Open Space Advisory Committee. Are we fine kind of scrapping that in favor of having these kind of 3 sections? And I think that's okay.
so I guess my first question, I'll try to organize. My first question is, so the advisory committee was moved from Article 5, I think, down to Article 12. Do you want to keep that here or at all? Because Claire's doesn't have that, so.
It sounded like we wanted a lot more flexibility on what that committee was. Could it be merged with another one? What does it need to be called? So I kind of tried to sidestep that.
And I think there was additional
Bringing it back.
discussion with its role and kind of with this, especially with the disposal of open space, making sure that there are kind of those guardrails too. So I don't know now if we're going with the voter process, if that's necessary to have this in here. If we make the disposal of such kind of pretty clear cut and we give it back to the voters as opposed to giving potentially more power to 3 members of an open space advisory committee. But what is kind of everyone else's thoughts, readings with that?
Are we talking about disposal now, or are we talking about this other
Just having
language
a
of
committee.
needing an open space
Just
committee?
having this committee in general. And I thought the rationale with making sure or ensuring that we always had this committee was as a guardrail. And instead, we're using the vote itself as a guardrail
For disposal,
for disposal.
but not acquisition.
I think just to have a resident-led committee giving feedback on how to manage open space and what to do with it, its function isn't really just weighing in on disposal of lands, right?
And I see it as actually 3 layers. So it's got to go through, the committee has to approve it, then it's got to go to the town council to approve it, then if that all works out in the positive, then
Then the voters.
the voters have to approve it
For the disposal.
for the disposal, yes. Right.
But I think, yeah, I mean, I think including something about an open space committee is a good thing in here because it can address all three of the phases, including the management side of it.
Right.
So whether there's open space committee, or not. If people don't want to put it in here, that's fine, we've got it
But
covered.
let me play devil's advocate for a little bit, though. I don't know that an open space committee would ever recommend to dispose of open space, right? So I don't know that, because they may make a recommendation, but I don't think the board would necessarily have to.
I don't have to abide by it.
That's right.
No, but by that other language, we were saying it did have to come through. Oh, that's right, we moved on to Erie, or Eagle, sorry. Let's put the disposal away.
Yeah.
So do we want to have something, I think putting something in here about an open space advisory committee, given how important open space is to the town, and having a committee in there to look at all phases of it is a good thing, it's a good statement across the board. I don't think it hurts us at all, because all these advisory committees are not necessarily bound. The whole piece of, that process, we'll ignore all that. The committees are all advisory, the board can do what they want to do,
That's right.
regardless of what the committees say.
That's right.
But having a citizen-led committee, it's interest that goes through the town and what the town thinks. But if you guys don't want to have it in here, if you want to delete it, that's fine, but
I mean,
it's a good thing to
I do
include in
think
the charter.
as long as we have open space, I like the idea of having a resident-led committee to make recommendations regarding how to use it. But does it have to be called that? Can it be merged with another committee? Sure, as long as some committee of residents has that responsibility.
Yeah, because didn't we
That's how
have
I
the
see it.
discussion a few meetings back that as long as there is going to be open space, that we wanted to have an open space committee?
Right.
Or
Right,
just a committee responsible for the recommendation of spending that money, right? Because there was a time when we actually talked
right.
about merging OSAC and Park.
Yeah.
And by this language, we wouldn't have been able to do that, even if it would have been in the best interest of the town.
Okay, and then, but we also said that there could be a time when the town of Superior wants to do away with that tax, reallocate it, or we don't need it anymore because we don't need to we can't buy any more open space. But we would still have an open space advisory committee because we have open space that needs to be managed.
That's what I would think.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's fine.
okay, yeah.
I'm good with that.
And that's that first sentence there. That was what it was the special fund for open space is what the
Yeah.
language you decided on. I think this,
Wait. Oh.
So I think the point people were making was the open space tax is independent of everything here. If this section is about open space, we leave it about open space. There should be a advisory committee for the open space, the acquisition, the maintenance, management, and the disposal of, right? There's an advisory committee across the board, so we can cover that as a whole, right?
So instead of a special fund, should the actual ballot initiative, I
The
guess,
actual, like,
number or
name
date,
of it?
should that be called out?
But
Because this sounds,
So you're reacting to the words, I guess?
Yes.
I mean, if that's what we're doing, I didn't think we're in the wordsmithing phase right now.
I think-
So the question is, do we talk at all about having a fund or not having a fund? Because if the open space, even if the fund went away and we decided the town voted to reallocate it to something else, we'd still want to have an open space. We still have to deal with open space, whether with an advisory committee. Yeah, I think we
As
do.
long as we have open space.
but so the requirement is if the special fund exists, you have to have a committee. If the special fund doesn't exist, you could still have a committee. Nothing in this language stops you from having that.
It doesn't force the town.
We want to have a committee.
You wouldn't have to.
But I think what we're saying is,
You want
I
it,
think
no
what we're saying
matter
is
what.
independent of a source of revenue or whatever else. We want to have, open space is important, I think.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know? So if that's one of our core tenants, I don't know if that hurts anything.
Yeah.
Can we, okay.
Maybe as long as we have open space,
Yeah.
if you want to say, as long as we have open space, we should have an open space committee.
If you want to do that, then I would suggest just making it an advisory committee and softening the language so it's not
Yes.
like, it has to be this committee named this and this kind of
An
thing. So it
advisory
can be an
committee.
advisory committee that helps the town council
Right, I think
decide
that's
how
what
to
he's saying,
spend money
yeah.
or.
So independent of all this, what's
Well,
written
that's what
here.
we have to get there. We have to get
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
wordsmithing part of it, so
I
we
think-
have to do this part.
So take out open space. Are we wordsmithing now or no?
Just,
I don't know.
I think-
No,
I thought we were
if
going to rewrite.
if you generally nod your heads at that to me, I will just make those changes.
Yeah.
If we make a rewrite, is effectively what it is. Yeah.
Sorry to be difficult here, but there was a different chapter about committees.
Yep,
That
Article
calls out
5.
which committees are required.
We
Should
took
we
that
be
out.
calling this out there rather than here?
Well, that was
That
some
was
of
a
the
big
questions.
discussion.
They wanted it moved
Taking it out,
last
yeah.
meeting they
Okay,
asked.
sorry.
Because we had that in there, but not other advisory committees.
No, I know, right? And I agreed with all of that. And I guess,
So open space has a special place in our hearts.
no, I know, it's just interesting because we
And our
call out
committees.
boards and committees. We don't call out the open space committee yet. We have a separate chapter. I mean, should we put a sentence in there, an open space pursuant to chapter 12, or something like that, just to reference that?
We could.
It's all
I mean,
together.
that's, again, that'd be a feel-good if anything else, right? So,
It doesn't matter. Let's move on. It's not going to change the enforcement of this.
Yeah. Okay, so as far as organizational standpoint goes, keep kind of like maybe a purpose section, keep this open space advisory committee, soften some of the language associated with it, and then organize it kind of those three buckets: purchase, management, disposal. Let me just
And I-
double check. It was designation, apologies.
and I think-
Designation, purpose, disposal.
I think Claire's designation language is somewhat similar to what's up there. There's some differences, but
she pulled it from Boulder, she said, right? Yeah.
Well, okay, so
It's also got
what
the
I put
committee
was
in it, so,
in
yeah.
under designation that the town shall provide a zoning or land use designation, have an advisory committee, and have the inventory of vacant land. It was three things.
So the inventory of vacant lands, I mean, that happens today by both the town and the committee, right? So this isn't I mean, it's good, I mean, it's fine to have it here. It's not like it's adding new work.
But it's,
Maintaining the best practices, right?
All property. With respect- Two is hard though, because what does distinct zoning mean?
We're coming full
Yeah.
circle.
Oh,
as to
did
what
you
open
guys
space
do all
is.
this, all this?
no, I don't think we had that conversation, did we? I don't remember that conversation.
No,
Do you know what I'm going to come back to? Because this is what I keep.
no, I know, right? Because
I would say it's open space zoning. That's what I.
But again, it goes back to
there,
zoning.
but there's
can be changed.
agriculture, there's
Yeah.
open space natural, there's, right, there's other,
You only have, do you have ag zoning here? No.
We have it.
Yeah.
Yes, it exists.
And your open space zone is just open space zone?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
This goes back to zoning and whether you can then
No,
change the zoning and then you can dispose of it
well-
because it's no longer zoned that way. So this is,
We'll just
but if you're maintaining an
Yeah.
appropriate distinct zoning for open space, that's actually, I think that's good actually for that purpose, right? That you couldn't actually go change that zoning. Is that what that's saying?
which paragraph is saying that
Just-
you can't change zoning?
can't.
1201
that you can't
I think
re-
it's
that you
saying
can't
like,
rezone open space?
I think it's saying in your legislative, in your code, you have to provide for
Right.
a zone district that's for open
Yes.
space. I think
But
that's all
It
it is.
doesn't mean that it can't be
Yeah.
rezoned, though.
Right, that's
I
the
don't
problem. That's the problem in the protection side of it all, is if you can, if zoning is used,
So maybe put a pin in that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
I'll just say that we are having this values discussion based on today's form of thinking. 100 years from now, values around open space may change and situations may change where the town needs to do something different with the open space land that it owns. And I don't want to necessarily handcuff those future boards.
And I think that's why we have,
And-
why
and,
we.
yeah, I guess that's the values discussion
Put
we're having.
procedures in for disposal, because they can dispose of it. There could be a time when there isn't open space if the town votes
can
to
change
dispose
the
of all the open space.
They
and
can
because
certainly
they need
go to
something
the
else.
voters and change
the
the
charter
whole
at the
charter,
time,
sure. It's just
Meetings
one
change that
vote,
much,
yeah,
yeah.
one election.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
change it, so. Isn't there something going on in Boulder or other parts of Colorado where because we need more space for affordable housing, so they're talking about.
And it's a big issue right now.
Reducing the height limits and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. or open space? Isn't that a big deal? And so it's going to go to the voters probably eventually. So it'd be the same thing here.
Not necessarily just for open space, but you're exactly right, Chris. The legislature is considering multiple bills that address affordable housing and changing what allowable densities or location or proximity to transit-oriented communities, I think is the one that's up for committee next week.
So those types of long-term changes, right, that'll result in votes that change things at a significant level, right? I mean, open spaces, and when did Boulder do their first open space? 1970, 1965, something like that. So these are long-term things. So I don't think we're hamstringing anyone in this type of timescale.
All right, well,
So-
what are,
We'll make this the designation section.
So the
of
only
your-
issue then goes back to, does changing something from open space to something else require some additional step? Because I think that fundamentally is the one that.
Well, and that's what was in Erie's language, that required a vote.
So again, maybe it's the same thing. If it's over half an acre,
It's got to go to the
if
voters.
it's over half an acre.
Whether you
wanna change-
sell it or you rezone it, to me, it doesn't make any difference.
But you just have to be really
Changing it.
careful with this language of, when we bought it, it was residential. We shouldn't require a vote for it to be rezoned open space natural for a third of for a
That's right.
acre
You want it to
lot
just go
alone.
kind of the-
But it's almost like when you're, I don't know if that's the right term for it, but you're zoning it to be less protective would require a vote.
Yeah, so
It's really zoning away from open
the
space.
town is, the residents of the town have already given approval for that. So you guys, or the town bought that with open space funds, so the approval from the voters has already been done. You don't, but
No, I
to
agree.
change it back, I think you do.
It's implied that it should be zoned open space natural at the time of purchase. But-
Right.
But if we put language in there that rezoning requires a vote, we just need to be careful is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That it needs
Rezoning.
to
Oh,
be-
right.
That it
Okay.
needs to be going from open space natural or something that's open space designation to non-open space designation.
Yeah. Right.
That was a flaw in Erie's language that
Yeah.
I saw.
Oh, so they had any zoning?
They had, any zoning change had to go to a vote.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, okay.
Yeah, that would
be a
hamstring
problem.
a town.
That would be
Yeah.
problematic.
Yeah, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of what we want to
But
do.
you
is
could
Yeah.
put
have
language
control
in
of
there
it.
that it's a less restrict, or whatever the language would be, but the intent is going from something that
Yeah, from open
really
space
couldn't be
to-
built to something that could be, or I don't know what the right
You can't zone
wording
it, you
is
can't
there,
zone it
but-
away from open space.
Correct. We need to be careful because it's not always open space natural. It could be agricultural or others.
So then I guess there's another question then says, now we get back into the dollars, the tax dollars, right, for the fund. There's nowhere in the language that says what the zoning has to be if you buy property with the tax fund, so.
No. The language, the ballot doesn't say that.
Right,
The
obviously.
Town staff does it, or the town and the board do it by practice,
Yeah, right.
because it's
It
the right
doesn't
thing to
say
do.
it has to be open space purchased with open space funds?
No.
Oh, I thought that was the point of the fund.
You got to read the ballot language though, right? It just talks about, we have these funds to be able to purchase and maintain open spaces, basically what it says.
It's the concept of you believe everyone's going to do what's right. And as we see more and more, that doesn't always occur anymore,
Yeah,
right?
And
That's the
I'm
challenge.
not entirely sure you could have put that in a ballot question.
Oh, really?
Because that's a legislative act by the board that I'm not sure could be delegated like that. I haven't looked into that, but I think that's
No,
probably.
at this stage.
Yeah,
right.
okay, so.
There's
let-
nothing else in our zoning
Yeah.
code that has the words open and space together in them. Unless you mentioned agricultural, so anything that would be upzoned from open space?
Everything
Yes.
would be.
Anything would be
Yeah.
upzoned other than agricultural.
But I do think maybe that's the right word, upzoned from open space natural, right? Because that may be,
Or anything more intense.
yeah, more intense or, yeah.
Yeah. Is open space natural, is zoning, or it's just open space?
It's open space natural is what the title is in our zoning code.
Oh.
Okay.
But does that preclude, I mean, if you wanted to make it a trail or you wanted to make it a little more active than just, I
No,
mean,
that's
isn't
still,
natural?
that's an allowed
That's
use
still
in
in-
an open space natural,
Okay.
a trail or even like a shade
Okay.
shelter or It doesn't have to be 100%. Hopefully, correct me if I'm wrong, but I just
Exactly right. So,
remember
yeah,
from
there's-
talking to
Slowly evolves.
Leslie, the same
Okay,
discussion.
okay.
Clint, you're thinking of the charts that are in, under each of the zoning classes in our code, and there's one exactly like you're describing for open space that has, just like you're describing, Ryan, shelters, trails, whether or not it's allowed or has to go to a special use review, or it's prohibited, just like all the other zoning codes.
Okay.
Open spaces follows the exact same pattern. It's, I'm assuming, required that way by the attorney.
Okay.
Catherine, when this charter's, before it's sent to the board and all that, and we've signed off on it, what's the process that you followed? Is it just reviewed by you, or do you have a committee of lawyers that have been through this to read through this? Just to say that, because we're going through a lot of things that we think are right, and the language we think is right, but we may be caught up in the moment right now. So does somebody go through it also, and just by committee? You might want to reconsider this. Okay.
Yeah. And that's what your next couple of meetings will probably be about.
Okay.
Okay.
Will be, so, like, for example, like, you know, if you want to, you know, have the rezone be part of, you know, the ballot, it has to get voter approval for park. You know, we'd want to go back to the referendum section and make sure that was excluded so it wouldn't run a cycle. You know, those kinds of things. So we have to tie those things together. All the changes, you know, you make a change in Article 12, but it
Right,
might
okay.
affect Article 2 up
Yeah.
here. So we have to go through it, yeah.
Okay.
So
Good.
your town attorney is probably going to want to see it, is my guess. Okay.
Is Kendra still?
She is?
Okay. So as far as like the actual verbiage itself, we want to stick with Eagle's language throughout? Do we want to have the definition from Boulder? Do we want to stick with this purpose language right now at the onset, or do we want to change any of the language here? And then after this kind of open space advisory committee, having those kind of 3 additional sections.
The only thing from Eagle that sticks in my mind is the half acre.
Disposal, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't know, I couldn't say, yeah, let's go with this one over the other, so.
So.
I agree.
Yeah, on back to the rezoning and voter approval, is that something you want to see added to, because that's not in Eagles.
Yeah.
I think
That's in
that would,
Erie's.
I think that would be in the disposal
Right,
section.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Rezoning and disposal or something.
okay.
And then just for clarity, right, so if there's no other open space zoning, then basically anything bought with the open space fund, it would be a completely logical and probably legally defendable that it should be zoned open space after procured.
Yeah, there's no other zoning classification that contemplates open space
Right, so I think it'd be hard to do anything but, okay.
or agricultural.
Yeah.
You never made any changes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would probably violate the use of those funds to like, even if you didn't rezone it, it's actually what it's gonna be used for, right? So if you put like a big apartment building on it, you're gonna violate your own.
Yeah, but even if you zone it as a park, when it was bought with open space funds, I think you would still have it could be a legal issue.
Yeah.
So,
But Jeff, are you saying maybe we should review all the properties purchased with the open space fund to date and maybe make sure everything is classified open space natural at the?
I can tell you the answer. I'm
I assume
familiar
you
with
did.
the
I
chart.
assume
The
it
answer
is.
yes.
It's already there,
I
or
can
we
bring
need
it
to
up
do
if you
that?
want.
No, I've looked at it, yeah.
It's the same one you're thinking.
Like I said, it's all contemplating that everyone does what's right. It's about making sure we don't have a problem later on.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
nothing if not consistent.
So just to keep us moving along
Yep.
here. So the definition, I don't know that the definition that in Claire's document, whether that's a yes or a no or a maybe or.
Wanted to expand that a little?
I say
right?
throw it in, we can
Yeah.
wordsmith it and cut it down we're gonna go to another review, right? I mean, the whole point of this
This
is
will
you're
be
gonna.
This section,
to.
yes,
Right.
Yeah.
for sure.
So-
Okay, so I'll put that in there. The purpose section in there now will become the designation section. We'll have the committee section. And the one thing we haven't really talked about is the purchasing. We have this classification in management. My opinion, my suggestion to you is to remove this. These are administrative functions that shouldn't be in the charter.
I had the same thought.
Not necessary.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
And
Any
then
other-
Let's see, can we look at that one more time then?
you haven't talked about purchase at all.
Yeah, can we go up a
go
little
back.
bit?
Yeah, let's
Oh,
see
I'm
what you're trying to,
sorry.
what do you
I'm
want to
sorry.
move here?
Yeah, because I'm fine kind of excising this because this almost seems like it's mostly town staff responsibilities in detail. In a lot of this, at least.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, you would put in here, some of these values of, native grasses and all that kind of stuff that was existing elsewhere, if you were going to put something in here to that extent, but we're not doing.
The open
we're
space
not doing all
summary
that.
report has 5 pages on this, right? So
Right.
you could, I mean,
Right.
this
No.
is, yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And then purchasing. I will say that there's nothing special going on in this section at all. You can
Yeah,
do
I-
all this stuff.
I mean, I was thinking about paragraph 4, that could almost be limiting, right? Because if there was some other avenue to acquire property, but it wasn't listed here, would that limit you? Or is
No.
that without limitation? Okay, so these are examples of other ways that you could, really, it's just other potential ways to, so it's more educational than
Yeah.
limiting of the town.
It's fluff.
Yeah. it's-
Should we
yeah.
put in something about the use of the funds from the tax here?
Sorry, say it again?
Yeah, something to the effect that the funds raised by the open space tax can only be used to purchase open space?
I gotta tell you, I just leave the ballot
No.
language as the ballot language.
Yeah,
and
'cause
just-
now you're changing the ballot language. The ballot
Oh.
language says maintenance, it's
doesn't-
been used for trails, it's been
Okay,
used for.
can't retroactively state that.
Trailhead, like Ormond Roche was paid for by open
Right, I
space
think she's just saying,
funds, so-
that it's, again, an awareness that there's an open space fund that can be used for, further purchase of open space. I think that's.
Well, I mean,
where you're going in there, but.
It sounded like there was maybe some concern that the ballot language didn't really specify what that fund could be used for or something.
Oh, I see. I think we're probably gonna appreciate that, yeah. I think we're probably good on that.
Okay.
I think the only thing of, if you wanted to if you're gonna put a statement about the purchase open space, it would be sort of one of the ones that came from one of the committees that, the town continues to look for opportunities to, acquire open space to improve the quality of life and blah, 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 motherhood apple pie stuff. So,
And-
again, it's.
Yeah, I mean, if you recall, when we talked about in the funds section, in the finance section, you guys decided to actually take out the reference to that fund because it was the only one listed there besides, it was like general fund, open space fund, and then it said other funds. And you guys actually thought, don't call it out.
Yeah. So really, yeah. I mean, it keeps coming back to, are we, is there a value statement within this or not? And I think we've moved away from that
Yeah.
to a large extent. So.
But the value, again, I think we could get some of the value in the preamble though, as
Yeah.
well.
Do you want a value statement up in the purpose, the very first section, one sentence value statement, and then the definition in that, and then
Yeah, that might
we could
work.
one
If it's not,
sentence.
if a value statement isn't sufficiently covered in the preamble,
Sure.
because I think that's where we were talking about,
preamble,
talking about the values in
I
the
tried to
preamble,
keep it
so we're
very
not
short.
having it delineated in each section.
You saw Dalton's preamble, it's,
I tried to keep that preamble very short, but we'll touch on that in a bit.
I think you get much shorter than that, so.
Okay, so we'll remove this section. Okay.
I mean, I'd put a value, if you want to put a one-sentence value statement at the beginning.
Appreciate it.
Can't hurt.
I liked what you did.
Oh, thank you.
It's not a page and a half. Just-
Okay. Out?
Yes.
Out. Okay.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Wow, we got through it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was a very good, lively discussion, I think. All right.
On to new business.
Yeah.
Catherine, are you clear on,
Yeah.
at
Well,
this point?
we're going to be going through.
I'm clearer.
So.
Clear? Okay.
It will hopefully look a little more organized than it
Yeah.
currently does.
I always think it's not the last time we can edit. We can always go back.
You're gonna have a couple more times to
Yeah.
go through it all, so.
Okay. So now Article 13.
So this is the section I was referencing earlier, that's this will be the third time this issue is addressed. It's very similar to 104G.
Yeah, does it need to be there?
I don't think so.
So in the, now I gotta look at that, 104G, is there also a except as expressly provided herein?
No, but we talked about adding
that in
something
there.
like that in there,
Right.
yep.
So as long as we're covered up front, then yeah.
Yeah, the only thing this one does that, it talks about the means of doing it, so the ordinance versus the resolution. Doing different things, so resolution by lease, ordinance for sale, exchange, or dispose.
Could that be wrapped up into one in the language up there?
We could add that back to the top, okay.
I think most of the other
Take it out.
charters had this in their miscellaneous, so it's just curious why, but
I think
maybe it's
the-
these details.
I think it's the method, yeah.
And I'm fine. Everyone's kind of thoughts? Cutting this?
Cut it.
Okay,
Cutting it? Yes, okay.
yeah. Uh, 13.02, I saw a couple of charters didn't have that section, revocable license.
Yep, totally unnecessary.
Okay. Does anyone have a strong preference in having that? I'm fine just eliminating that just for brevity's sake.
Everybody's favorite topic. Cookie. Cookies like, oh.
You want to talk about eminent domain now? Would you rather just skip that section? So I'll talk a little bit about why it is in there. You may recall the Valley Floor case from Telluride, where Telluride tried to condemn the Valley Floor that was outside the town's jurisdiction. Went all the way up through the Colorado Supreme Court. And the court relied on Telluride's charter as vesting that outside of town limit condemnation authority in Telluride. So that's why it's in there. That's why we would recommend it stay in there, so that the town could rely on that case law and that interpretation to allow extraterritorial condemnation.
We're gonna condemn RMMA.
Is it necessary? Would you recommend? Because again, reviewing some of the other charters, some of them don't have kind of that second section in accordance with Title 38, Article 1 of the Colorado Revised Statutes as amended. Is that part needed, or is it okay to just kind of end that sentence with or without the limits of the town, period?
You could end it without that reference.
Anyone have strong?
Yeah, I mean, that's the process for condemnation in that title, so you're gonna follow that anyway, but.
I'm not opposed to leaving that in.
Okay.
Just,
Yeah, just leave it. It says,
That's
it
fine.
says
Well,
we're not doing anything special, and
And
everyone
if
looks at it and
you
says,
cared
oh, yeah.
about this, you know exactly where to go look now instead
Yeah.
of needing to guess. So I tend to like it.
It's half a sentence.
Yeah.
Okay.
So under what circumstances could you condemn something outside of your jurisdiction? I mean, not that we need to go into all those cases, but there's precedent where you could, right? If there was adjacent land and you needed it for a utility or something, you could.
Most of the
Condemn it.
cases before Telluride are for utilities, so,
Okay.
you know, a
well-established
waterworks or-
reason.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's, so you cannot condemn without a public purpose, so that's that public
Okay,
purpose
okay.
language again. So you have to establish a public.
Okay.
You can't just be like, we just like that, you know, we just
Yeah,
want
we
it
want
for-"
views from this restaurant to
Right,
not be
right, you
obstructed,
can't
so-
just do that.
Well,
so,
in
yeah.
reality, I mean, the challenge is with the eminent domain law. Our eminent domain has been proven to be, say, hey, I want to, it's in the public interest that a shopping mall goes there, and therefore people, I mean, so
Oh, yeah.
public interest
Okay.
is a very, very broad
Yeah,
term when it comes
okay.
to eminent
And when
domain.
it-
That's
when
what's
it-
scary about it being in here at all.
When it comes to
That's a
home rule
hazard.
municipalities, and that is regardless of whether this is in
Yep,
your charter or not.
exactly.
The public purpose is much more expansive. So statutory municipalities have to have a statutory designation for that public purpose. So if it's for, you know, water facilities, that's in the statute, so they could condemn for that, because it's in the statute, it's expressly given to them. But home rules, the public purpose is much broader.
This was, there was eminent domain on the marketplace. So, I mean, so it's happened for, to be turned over to a developer, so I mean,
It's not a, it isn't, it's a really unpleasant thing, but I think the worst was that sidebar, again, what was it, adverse possession case up in Boulder several years ago, where that family was making a trail through their neighbor's yard, but it wasn't built yet, and they've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So then they said, well, we're claiming this land, and it was like half their property.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's legal, and I just, so I've got a really bad feeling about this kind of stuff.
that's not eminent domain, though, but that's.
No, it's not,
Yeah,
but it's just still, you're taking something from someone else, and.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, you know, with condemnation, eminent domain, you can't do it without just compensation. Adverse possession is going to be a little different, right?
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
no compensation awarded in an adverse possession case.
And just is the relative term when it comes to eminent domain.
There's a process for it, so. All right, okay. So moving on, like 1302, 1304 is also completely unnecessary. This is a statutory function. It's allowed by statute. Obviously, I'm sure you know it happens all the time. So if you wanted to take that out, no harm, no foul on that.
Yeah.
Take it out.
Yeah.
All right.
Sleek and efficient.
So this section, I removed all those other public record sections and just put one just general statement in here. And I think I borrowed it from severance. I think I put that in the notes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good.
Okay.
Any other? Okay.
I couldn't understand what one was
sorry.
saying here.
I'm sorry, can we just go back?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, to the public records?
Yeah, just reading that again. By any person at reasonable times in accordance with applicable law, what is?
So not 3 a.m. when the town hall's not open?
Between working hours.
Okay, I was.
And
I
when,
was
and when
wondering
the
whether-
clerk is available and,
Just to make-
because it's
Okay.
by inspection, right?
Okay,
So-
no, I was reading it as a time for responding to as a
No,
time
that's
for,
going to be
you know,
governed by, Open Records Act.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Continue with your question.
Oh, no, just,
What the first one is?
I just can't understand what this is trying to say.
It is a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it was
Basically,
because-
you can take gifts, and then you can do all the things necessary to carry out what the person who gave you the gift says it should be for.
But is this as a council member or is it as a town?
Town.
To the town,
As I
yeah.
interpret it.
As a council.
Not a member,
Oh, I thought this
not
was
individual
individually.
gifts. It's for the town.
No, it's for the town.
That's
So
what he's
like
asking.
someone,
Yeah, it's not me buying
Donate
you a
some-
car, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor.
You're
No,
buying-
no, no, no,
you're buying us cars? Yeah.
no, on behalf of the town. So someone wants to, let's
Why
say,
does
give
it
you
need to-
open
okay.
space. Yeah,
Why does this need to be in here then?
it does not need to be in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
And neither does.
Basically just saying
subsection two.
you can accept these from the
Or
town.
refuse them, yeah.
Or refuse them.
Yep. And do anything you need to do to carry out the requirements of the gift, if it had any, so.
Why wouldn't it need to be in here? Is it enumerated somewhere else in the charter?
No, it's not anywhere else in the charter. It's probably not in the code. The town might do number 2 automatically as part of its budget process. I don't know. But it's just inherent in a municipality's powers to do these things and accept gifts. And the town could always pass an ordinance to address, donations or gifts or something like that if it really felt the need to. None of my clients have anything like this in their code.
So 1306 could be removed.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, state statute allows any municipality to accept gifts.
Yeah, and I'm honestly not even sure if it's in state law or not. It's just something you can do. You can just accept gifts on behalf of the town, right? We're not talking about, right? This is not, this is not your gift limit, gift ban limit or anything like that. So,
Okay.
you want to take it out?
All right.
Or sister cities could still
Yeah,
gift items to the town.
yeah.
Are we going to get a tea house like Boulder?
That would be cool.
Yeah.
I just want that wine bar to open.
Oh, yeah.
If it doesn't
they
need to be in there,
Yeah.
then if it doesn't serve a value or a purpose, then I'm fine getting rid of it.
No.
Out.
Yep.
May establish procedure. That's pretty
Is,
funny.
is this one
No.
necessary?
So the first section, no. I mean, you don't need the first subsection. The reason the second subsection is in there is the competitive bidding. So it's going to require competitive bidding, subject to what town council prescribes, which could have flexibility and exemption, waivers and things like that. So I suspect that, I don't know if this came from Eagle through Erie or just through Erie, that they wanted some, kind of floor competitive bidding mentioned in their.
So the way I would look at this from a different perspective is may and shall are two different things.
That's right, yeah.
I would put, if I would do is I would lead this and say the town council shall establish procedures for contracting, because that's basically putting out the onus to say, hey, there is a process, so there can't be any willy-nilly way that people are doing the contracts. And then I would leave it from that perspective.
Yeah, we've had one for as long as we can remember.
Oh, I know we do, but I'm just,
Yeah, I agree with that because it's worked for a long time, and why not keep a good thing going? So I agree with them. That was the same point, may or shall. It's,
No.
if it says may, why have it?
I can do whatever I want. Hey, Joe, you want a contract? Here we go.
Any other?
No. Okay.
Should those procedures, in other places, we've talked about procedures through ordinance or procedures through something else like that. Is that something that needs to be in there and how the procedures are established or not?
My legal opinion is no. It's just a matter of preference.
And then the operational reality is that the policies that are in it address very specific things that will need to change, like whether or not a new technology is available or new sustainability practices to be incorporated in how purchases are assessed. So the policy gets updated as technologies change and times
Fair enough,
change.
fair enough. Okay.
And the dollar thresholds have also changed.
Is it just adopted by resolution? Yeah.
It's kind of like ISO 9001. You have to have it, but it doesn't care what it says as long as you
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah, you got to have a starting place.
You gotta have a procedure,
Yeah.
you gotta follow it, but no one cares what the procedure is.
Yeah, if somebody wants to know if we can do competitive bids, we absolutely do. And then what those include, sometimes do need to evolve over time.
Right, yep, okay.
I think we started out at $10,000, now it's 100, times have changed.
Yeah. Any other kind of questions, comments on this or any other kind of subsequent items?
This all seems like pretty standard.
Yeah, I
Boilerplate.
didn't have any changes on any of the other subsequent items.
Yeah, I'd leave those in there.
No. Okay.
Okay, just ask a question about indemnification.
Uh-huh.
So can you just explain what this is referring to here?
Sure. So this covers anything, but basically it's saying that, so under the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act, this is kind of where this stems from. It has similar language in there that the town basically can indemnify anybody who's as an individual council member, mayor, employee, appointed official, who is party to a case. So sometimes individuals get sued, right? And so the town can indemnify them. So they'll pay their damages if we lose, they'll pay their defense costs, and that kind of thing. And so that's what that means, that the town has the choice to do that.
We've had developers threaten to sue us personally before.
Okay, so us as a charter committee, if this gets approved by the voters, could we be part of this? Would we be, potentially, could we be at risk of being sued by something that,
No, there's no cause of action against you as charter.
even though I guess we're not approving this, but we're drafting it, so our names are applied to
We're
it.
not approving it, the voters approve it.
But even if you were for some reason approving it, there's no cause of action against you.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing to claim against you, so the lawsuit wouldn't occur in the first place. So You're good, you're good.
Are you thinking
ask that question the
you want to
first
add one more to this? Just
I
in
might have to
case?
resign.
Or any appointed official.
If, yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah, I wouldn't lose sleep over that one. Okay, so Article 14, so because this was taken from Erie switched to, they switched their elections. So there's a lot in here about that. And so I tried to get rid of all of that for you.
Yep, I didn't have any issue.
Yeah, no
didn't
notes on
either.
this.
Yeah, basically, everything continues as if kind of nothing happened. If it gets approved. Yeah.
So Martin, would staff then, I guess it would probably come from the board's direction if that was the case, go through sort of what the cost effectively is going to be, as this transition happens before it goes to election? Would that be kind of one of the actions that you would expect to occur, or?
Well, I don't know that there's going to be really any other specific costs other than the ones that were listed in the, outreach that went out before the election that, for y'all to be appointed to this group. It was $10,000 or $15,000 for fees.
Okay.
But nothing beyond that.
I would think Kendra's time to redraft all of those resolutions and all of the ordinances and all the stuff that has to get passed per this would be a significant cost, more than $10,000 or $15,000, unless Kendra's rates have gone down a lot.
Well, I don't know how many hours it typically takes, but there's a scrub of the code, I think, that Catherine's referred to a couple of times, and there's going to be some sections that need to be updated. I don't know that it's hundreds of hours, maybe tens of hours.
And that's what you do because you
Yeah.
sleep here at night.
That's our other team.
Yeah, I don't think that the charter, has made too many drastic changes that would require too much of your code to change. Now, the town may decide over time to kind of express its home rule powers and pass ordinances, but that does not need to be done necessarily automatically.
Oh, because I thought there were I thought there were some things here that said by ordinance we'll establish this, by ordinance we'll establish that, and so there'd be new ordinances.
Oh, yeah, we'll probably check those things to make sure, but.
A lot of new
yeah,
ordinances.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
But I
I think you
can't
have to remember,
imagine-
I think you mentioned at the beginning, if there's any contradictions between the code and the charter. the
Those
code
we
needs
have to make,
So I
yeah.
think that might be what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Just
There
looking
needs
at
to
all
be
that.
a scan to make sure that if anything needs to be amended or repealed or whatever,
Right.
that there isn't anything that's contradictory that's in both.
Sure. Okay, I was just thinking from the transition process. what
But yeah,
that's
that's exactly what needs to happen, just to make sure there isn't a
Well,
contradiction.
Just going back up real fast. Existing franchises, I noticed a couple don't have that section. Is that necessary? Would you recommend leaving it in?
I would recommend leaving it
Okay.
in, so it's perfectly clear that they don't expire.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. we have our
Or terminate, I guess I
Cable
should say.
franchise, right?
All right. So I
right.
think, maybe, congratulations.
Oh, we got.
We have the
Preamble.
preamble.
Now the real discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, the preamble was.
Gotta scroll
Yeah.
back up to the top. Hold on 1 second.
All right.
I think,
So as we clear the red lines, are we taking any bets on how many pages the charter will be? 28?
How many, 44?
We've
took
done
a lot
quite
down.
I know, we've done quite a bit of cutting.
Yes, done quite a bit of cutting, so.
the preamble.
And then Chris, you forwarded a separate draft.
No,
Yeah.
I deleted a lot of it.
Last minute. And
What was
yeah.
the one you sent? Or is it in here?
It was in the agenda packet.
Yeah, it's right at,
That email.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so draft language 1 was for me. Mike did draft language 2.
Okay, there it is.
Clint emailed me as well with some recommendations. So I actually also have pulled up I called it Clint's draft language. And then Chris, I saw you also.
Yeah, I
send-
apologize. I probably should have sent that through to you instead of the.
Oh, yeah, not a problem. You want to start? We can look at these first two. I am not married to the language at all. This is the very first thing that I attempted to write in this charter process. I thought we would do the preamble first because it was the very first item. So I was really trying to go brevity's sake. I included some language from the Gettysburg Address in the line. And then obviously it was just trying to keep it as succinct as possible so we can splice, dice, remove, excise, whatever everyone would kind of like.
I think it's from Schoolhouse house.
Are these meant to be separate? Because I think they go together really well.
I
one and number two.
I just separated because they came from different people, but not
Oh,
intentionally.
I
No, yeah.
actually think all those three
It seems like a good
lines go
sequence.
together. Yeah.
And in draft number 2, I tried to incorporate some of the values conversations that we've had over the last couple of months, using some of the key values words, just to share that that's important. Again, I'm not married to this, just the first draft. The only modification I would make after rereading this is the second line where it says government that is accessible. I would put the word open in open, accessible, responsive, accountable.
Yeah. Like I said, I think it sounds really nice. I like it. It's to the point. It's not too wordy. And I just read this all together and thought it sounded great.
So for comparison's sake, the Clint version that he referred to is actually Eagle's version, which I liked. And is it easy to pull that up just so everybody can see that?
Can you pull?
I can. I don't know that I got it.
Eagles? Oh, I didn't get his version, but he
I
says
have-
it's from Eagles.
It's
right?
Yeah, I
Eagles,
have
yeah.
it right in front of me. I can read it aloud if you'd like. The Charter Commission of the Town of Eagle, under the authority granted by the Constitution of the State of Colorado, by the Municipal Home Rule Act of 1971, and by the electors of the town, has created this Home Rule Charter by consideration by those electors. Through this charter and the local government that it defines, the people of Eagle reserve their right to address matters of local concern at the local level. The Home Rule Charter enables the people of Eagle to fully enjoy the benefits of self-governance and to provide for a successful future for the community by establishing a municipal government that is accessible, responsive, accountable, responsible, and professional.
And open.
Hey, there it is. The thing that struck me about this one was it starts off with the Charter Commission of the town versus we the people. And so that just kind of struck me as unique.
So I actually was thinking a little bit on the different side. I was like, I don't really care about the Charter Commission, but I do like the part about this being about government for local matters, for local issues, local governance of local matters and local issues, because that's fundamentally why, when I look at us doing this, the reason we're doing it is protections on the future for whatever kind of, state overreach there could be.
Yes.
So I like incorporating that part of it if we could.
Yes.
I
I liked all of it.
Yeah. So it's good to bring that up. I don't, the Home Rule Act of 1971 and all that, it's like, I don't need the history lesson per se for that in the charter itself. I think cutting to the chase of why we're doing this, I think is important.
And then we have Chris's version.
Yeah.
I think I'll retract mine. I was kind of I was close to that 5-page discussion that we had last time.
Well, I'm sure you saw that Monument did a synopsis and a preamble. They went to town, so.
Yeah, but this group is brevity.
Yeah.
Ours is going to be so readable and so short, we don't even need a synopsis. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I would take that kind of sentence on self-government or local matters and local issues, and I would kind of fold it into the draft 1, draft 2 of these two guys, and
Through this charter, the local government
Yeah.
reserves the right to address it.
I like that.
I would like to take that part of it and meld that into the Charter 1,
Yeah.
Charter 2 parts. The only other thing I'll
I was say, and there's some redundancy because the last sentence or the first paragraph of mine includes
Right.
a lot of,
Right, it can fold in.
because I think I copied that last
I think you
piece
did.
from Eagle.
And open. But the only one other one I'd add to yours on the bottom is the cultural recreational, but you don't mention open space.
Okay.
Natural.
To maintain the qualities and securities unique to you is
Natural.
important to protect and enhance natural, cultural, and recreational research. Well, natural could be open space, but I think calling out open space specifically would.
Well,
would be
again, given the
beneficial.
code designation of natural lands,
There's also climate, I think, is an important
Yeah.
piece, and that's not, right, that's the other piece of
put
open
sustainable
space, but-
future.
But, yeah, but natural and sustainable,
Sustainable.
right, that
Yeah.
all,
That'll help with the open space piece of it as well.
Yes.
Right, I see what you're doing
I
with
was
that.
trying not to wear too much of my ACES hat when I wrote this.
but I don't know, we never really talked about it, but I do think that, you know, if our climate's shot, what good is our open space, right? If we don't have any water, we have,
If we don't have any water, we might not have any town, basically.
then there is no maintaining the open space, so they go hand in hand in my view. Not that we need to go, anyway, sorry, I digress.
For a sustainable future, yeah.
So then you're down to so then the other one we were just discussing where you were cutting and pasting is down in the second to last line, enhance the towns somehow. So we have to decide how we want to factor in the sustainable and/or open space and/or natural.
It says provide for a sustainable future.
Yeah, I think
There.
that's natural and sustainable are pretty good.
Oh, up top there, I see,
Yeah.
I see, I see.
Yeah, and tried to weave in all the value buzzwords.
You definitely got them all, I think.
You know, I don't think.
Percent on bingo,
Again,
right?
at some point in time, what are people going to read before they vote on this? So if you want them to
Yeah.
improve it,
Yeah, they'll be
I
like,
say
"Sure,
throw some
this
good words.
sounds
And
good."
everybody, oh,
Yeah.
I like historic features. I like aesthetic features. You know, it's the.
This sounds warm and fuzzy.
You know, at some point in time, you got to have some warm and fuzzy here. So people got to have a reason to vote for it. So
And those will be right at the beginning, so that's
that's
first thing
probably
they
the only
see.
part they will read, right?
Probably.
So.
Any other, you like it, the 3 paragraphs together?
I like that. Mhm. Everyone's thoughts. Mhm. Oops. Okay. That was pretty quick.
A lot quicker than I thought it was going to go. I thought we were going to spend the next hour.
You know, when this commission decided on brevity, I think a lot of the wordsmithing just goes out the window. So it doesn't matter.
Okay.
All right. Then the next item is set schedule and discussion for the public hearing.
Okay, so, all right, yeah.
What are our options? Let's hear
So
that.
public hearing, isn't that, we had it set for April, or
Isn't it April 4th right now?
It is April
Yeah.
4th right now. So you still have one more meeting before that. And that allowed you to have final discussions on the 18th of April after the public hearing and,
Right.
you know, go through it again, finalize it again. And then your final meeting was May 2nd, and that's when you would approve your transmission to the Board of Trustees
and when does your group get together and review it and,
after this meeting.
oh,
So we'll start that process of cross-checking and making sure there's no issues.
Oh,
Because
that's great.
I prefer that to all be cleared up before the public starts to look at it.
yeah.
So we have one more meeting before the public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah.
A question from Martin, and I may have misheard this at First Friday. I thought I heard Matt mention that we were targeting May 6th to bring this before the town board, and if we take the final vote, if the Home Rule Charter takes the final vote on May 2nd, does that provide enough public notice to get on the board agenda for May 6th, or would we need to be on May 20th for the town board meeting?
I think Matt mentioned the very first one that would be possible after you have the hearing on it on, what is it, April?
April 4th.
4th. So yeah, that would make the publication deadlines for that. If it made sense to have it at the next possible meeting, it might make sense to have it on the 20th.
Okay.
Does the 180 days from, is required by the statute, or the,
Yeah, I have May 13th. Is that not your regular BOT meeting on your schedule?
Let's see,
I've
I
got,
think Matt might have had a different date. I think it is the second. I can't
Okay.
Here. Oh,
Let me,
And again, I may have
You drive.
let me look at one thing.
I may have misheard, so that's why I'm asking for clarification.
So they have 180 days to transmit it, and that's May 5th.
I'm seeing May 13th as the town board meeting.
Then I misheard. Okay.
And that meeting is just our chance to tell the board what we did. It's not up for
Yeah, May
discussion or
13th.
anything, like, we're done at that point, right? It's just.
Yep.
And remember, they don't get to change anything.
Yep.
They just refer. That's all they do.
Yeah.
So what's 180 days is they have to?
No, you have to
to be done.
transmit it. You have to be done in 180 days,
the
and that's
date of
May
the
5th.
election.
Oh, from
We have
last
to be
one.
done.
That's why Catherine's been so dictatorial on the end date. because That was the date that was approved.
Dictatorial?
I'm sorry, not dictatorial.
Assertive.
I have never seen a less pushy lawyer.
Okay, maybe me. Me and Matt want to make sure that we stay on the deadline that Catherine has established for the commission. And the 5/13 meeting is the date that Matt and I had identified as when this
Okay.
would go to the board.
And what's the timeline then? Obviously, we want to go with the regular board, the regular election in November, right? So then that fits in those timelines.
That fit, yeah. That
The
fits
point
all
was to
in.
get this from the commission to the board so that you have the maximum time possible to say, here's what it is. You have the next couple of months before the election, before the county finalizes the language, I think, in August on the calendar.
Yeah.
And then it's out for the public and it'll be in the blue book and everybody can have those dialogues. So maximizing that time for
Yeah.
public dialogue on this.
Right, and the
Yeah.
town can't do anything pro or against. Is that the case or not?
Under the fair campaign practices, yeah.
No advocacy,
No
just sharing
advocacy.
information.
That's gonna
Yeah,
fall
so-
on us.
Yeah.
June
Not-
4th
doesn't
is
have
the,
to, but.
June 4th is the last day for the town to publish the draft charter and give notice of the November 5th, 2024 special election.
I'm guessing there's going to be a lot more interest in it as we get closer to that election, as people are like, oh, I've got to vote on this, and now I really need to start figuring this out. Do we hold any other type of event as we get
I
closer?
think what Catherine said last time.
We're
is-
going to Chili Fest.
Chili Fest.
Chili Fest.
And the,
Okay.
is that the beer?
Beer Fest?
And as
Chili and beer
individuals, since we will be off the commission, we could advocate on our
Yeah.
own behalf.
Do any,
So the commission ends when we present it to the board, so we can beat all we
we're
want.
not bound by the same rules.
Yeah.
You technically end when it gets approved. So if it gets rejected, you come back and work on
Oh.
it again.
Oh, so that
But
means we
would-
can't meet.
Yes, individuals, you can go out and talk to people on your own time. You cannot use town resources to advocate for the charter. So you can't use staff
Yeah.
unless it's neutral,
Are we-
factual, pro-con thing.
But what about the open meetings
Are we still
laws
bound
at
by
that
that?
point? Are we still bound by
I think
that?
we're only bound, once they accept it, once the board accepts it, then we're off.
That's
the
a great
hook.
question.
Because we're gonna wanna
Yeah.
get organized and make sure our talking points are, we're on the
Yes.
same
Yeah,
page.
we're
with our
saying the same
talking
thing.
points, and
Let me
There's
think
some
about
work
that
left
one.
to be
That's a great
done there.
question.
Okay.
I guess,
Yeah,
we
that'd
need
be
to
good.
get that done
when
ahead
does
of
the
time.
term end?
When the voters vote, I think is
Okay.
Oh, you
really.
think it's that?
Well, because if they reject it, you have to come back and
Yeah.
work on
Yeah,
it.
so.
Yeah, that's a
Let's get
good,
it passed.
I was assuming that the open meetings laws would stop in May, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's going to think about it, she said.
Yeah. Okay.
How will the public meeting happen? I mean, it won't be a dialogue, right? It'll be public comment and we sit and listen and that's,
Oh, you can dialogue.
oh, we can.
In the
so-
public
public
hearing?
hearing.
In the pub, yeah.
Just like the hearings that you're talking
yeah.
about now.
Okay.
This will be exactly like those.
Just imagine the room full of people.
All the
Probably with
questions coming.
signs.
Okay, so it is, so it's not like public comment in a meeting.
field them,
It's
yeah.
open, it's dialogue with the public.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
sure.
awesome.
As much as you want, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But it is in this format we're sitting here. And
I think it's if people do come and then come with
When
questions.
people come.
When people
Yeah.
come, sorry, when people
And we have
come
people
and have a
standing in
bunch
the
of
back.
questions, it's a good time for
Yeah.
you to explain why you chose what you chose.
Yeah, okay,
And the
perfect.
talking points maybe that you're considering for Chili Fest or July 4th, maybe some of those will be something that can come up during that discussion.
I do find, I mean, I don't know about you all, but whenever I'm talking to people about this, the kind of questions that come up, I don't necessarily expect. So those questions are really good to know what the talking points would be. Like at First Fridays, someone was saying, well, what did he said something like, are we the first ones doing this or something like that? Like he wasn't aware of, the longevity of this within, and
The
so
last.
one of the talking points I thought is putting the date of all the neighboring communities and when they passed home rule. And it's pretty interesting to go look, Arvada, I think was 34. Boulder, I think was 1917. I think I got the date right. But I
Well,
mean,
Denver-
it's been around for a long
Yeah,
time. So.
Denver's over 100 years.
But I mean, I think a lot of people think this is brand new. So I think
that's a great
those are
idea.
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah, I think
points that
there's
come
Well,
up.
I think a lot
That's a
of
good point.
people also think it's going to solve the airport problem, which is a different
Well,
issue.
That's, yeah.
No, but
That's the other one.
I was interested though. Will we have time to sort of poke at this and say, here are the hot town topics? Does this change
How does
the
this
discussion around the topics, right? Like gun laws have come up a lot, the airport, affordable housing, right? These are where people are going to come to us and say, well, how does it impact that? It'd be great if we could test that with Kendra here. And I don't know if there's time built in, but it'd be great if we could.
And Ryan, I would, based on the conversations we had, and once we get through April 4th, I'd be happy to take a stab at drafting, like, some key talking points, and then we can discuss those at our April 18th
And I've already
meeting.
started, and my guess is other people have too, but
Yeah.
I do think it'll be
Yeah.
important for us to be on the same page.
Well,
when
I think
we're
that's
talking about
where
the differences.
That's where I think it'll be important just for us to know about the open meetings laws and being mindful or being bound by those. Because I think we all want to be kind of advocates in our own rights, either as individuals, obviously, but if we want to coordinate any sort of events, let's say in August or September, that's something that we'd like to be cognizant of and obviously follow open meeting laws accordingly.
So another question is, like, when do we lose Catherine's help?
What did you say? I'm sorry.
When do we lose your help?
You have my help for as long as you need it, because I'm in the firm with Kendra, so as long as you need it, you have my help.
Okay, one thing that comes up, my favorite questions on all of these is, how is any of these different than what state statute is today? Right, I mean, that's the one that, if I'm sitting looking and saying, why are we doing this? It's, why is this different? Why is this different? Oh, this gives us this extra power. Oh, this is the same. Because I think one of the other fears people would have is that things are changing in a negative way from what state statute is. Other things are changing in a positive way. Or maybe the majority of these things, they really aren't changing, right? I think it just gives us that little bit of a legal, in my opinion, gives us a little bit of a legal edge should we get into some contested areas with the state.
So Jeff, are you asking if she could have
I
a
would
document that says, these are the things that change and this is how it benefits the town?
I think we all have to look at that. I think just going through this and saying, this is the same as state statute, this is the
Yeah.
same as state statute, which, I mean, she did in a lot of the comments already in some of the past sections, right, this is exactly how it is today.
But it would be, I do think it'd be cool to have something that says, this is what's changed.
Yeah.
And,
Well, this is
as a
how I
home rule.
plan to talk about this
Right.
to my
Yeah.
friends.
No, I
and
think that's
family. Like,
great.
this
Oh,
is
she
what
can
it-
have that.
Don't worry about these 30 pages. I mean, read it, but here's what it means.
Right. But that's why I think all of the things, if we can do that, are kind of what you said. This hasn't changed, this hasn't changed, this hasn't changed. I don't think there's a whole lot of change what we have compared to state statute right now. It's really that local issues, local governance of local issues piece that gives us that freedom, the ability to have legs to stand on if it becomes an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I can go through it and hit some, I won't hit some of the smaller things, but I can hit some of the bigger things.
Oh, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
To that end, there has been a narrative at times that it's a power overreach, or that it is perceived as a power overreach. So I think that, that additional local powers is generally a good thing, but I mean, some people kind of could perceive that as a negative. So I think that is one of those points we should be prepared to talk about, that, no, it's actually not an overreach, it's actually, this or that.
I think those are some of the concerns that the other Ryan has articulated
Yeah.
throughout, some of the fears that are out there about this.
That's why.
Yeah, and just addressing those in the public hearing, and then obviously after we send those to the board will be good.
That's why it's been a balance, right, of the, I was going back to the protections, the protection side is as important to be in here as the not hamstringing the future councils, so.
And then around the election time, as long as there's no public funds spent, we can buy signs that say yes on home rule charter.
From your own pocket?
Yeah.
Sure.
Just like any other ballot item.
Yeah.
I've seen
Okay.
signs. Just the
So can we-
same standards apply from the temporary sign.
What's that?
I don't agree, Art.
So, yeah, are you done for that?
You have that down.
I've got that.
Yeah, you've got that down.
So if we end up still being under the open meetings law, then if we need to get together and things along those lines, then what's the process there? We can just.
Would we need to notify,
Notice it?
like-
How far, we just
Yeah.
get staff?
We post it, just like, so
Okay.
if you're going to be at First Fridays or July 4th, you let me or Matt know the week before, we'll post it. Just like happens with the board.
So we-
If board members let us know they're going to a Superior Chamber dinner, we post that notice as well.
We'd like to do the Thursday drinking thing.
Yeah,
We
first
should-
I post those in advance for Jeff.
Yeah, we should post every one of those in the fall, and Chili Fest, I think we should post
Yeah.
that. That way we can all kind of be in and out of our booth. I have a spinning wheel. You may have seen it at the mayor booth in the past. It's in my basement. I will donate that for the,
So then we throw balls and you fall into the water tank?
no, we're not doing a dunk tank.
Oh,
No, this is
Dunk
a
tank is pretty
spinning.
cold, I will say.
No, I've done my last dunk tank. I will not do that again.
I mean, we.
Oh, we gotta
can,
enter a
just have to
float
pay
in the
for it.
parade too.
Yeah. Home
All
rule
right, we're getting
swag.
crazy.
Yeah.
What else do you do? Yeah.
Okay, so at your next meeting, April or March 21st, so you will get probably a clean version of the charter.
Okay.
And a red line version. We'll start to shift to a clean version, so you can start to read it a little bit better. I know you get a Word version, and you can make it cleaner. So you'll get 2 of those. In addition, we'll go back to Article 11 and do the second review of that one.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the second review of 13, 14, and your preamble as
And
well.
12.
Yeah, I think,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so 11 through 14 preamble, we'll do second review.
yeah,
Okay,
Will the clean version be in a Word document?
yes,
Thank you.
okay,
okay.
all right.
And then maybe we can touch on some of these, like the open meetings law, the talking
Yeah.
points. I'll try to get that comparison to you so you can at least look at it and start to think about, what you want to do. So I'll put that all on the agenda.
So do we want to, in the spirit of this discussion of the public hearing, right? If we have time right now, what form do we see that? Do we see that as Kendra going through the Catherine going through the document? Do we see that as outlining the purpose of the document? I mean, should we have that discussion now, or you want to have the discussion next week? We got a little more time now. How have you
It's
seen other people do
however
that?
you want to do it.
Yeah.
Most times I think I've seen is basically the public comes and asks questions about things that they see. There might be a short presentation about maybe home rule, kind of in general, maybe not so much about the charter, but just home rule. And I mean, like, really short. I don't mean like what I gave you guys, like, slide by slide by slide or anything like that.
I think providing some,
Yeah.
providing some, to the talking point discussion, maybe providing some context about 93% of other towns and communities have done this. The oldest is whatever, 100 years old.
Yeah, there's a good slide from some of those slides out there that have that
Right.
summary. Maybe we
It's
just
to
reuse
provide
that.
the
Yeah.
broad context for the discussion, and then I think we've all talked about this in a way of it's enabling the town to manage its future, and so providing, again, some of that context so that the community has an understanding of what this is, and then we can get into the
Well, I
mechanics
created-
of the how.
Last year I did a couple of different education sessions on home rule and have that deck still available. I mean, I could share that with everyone. Could probably be shortened too, but if folks would be interested in that, we could just kind of go over that, tighten probably some things as well, update obviously that we've been going through this process. And that just at least eliminate some work maybe on Catherine's part. She doesn't have to do a PowerPoint. We can just kind of reuse this. What would be kind of everyone's thoughts? We can maybe start with that and then go through, and that kind of can give some context and history.
I think it'd be, really valuable to say, lawsuits usually occur between, feds and state, and then state and local in terms of what they're allowed to do. I mean, because that's usually where the contention, I think this allows some of those, the contention to be addressed for us. Otherwise, as a statutory town, we're pretty much locked to whatever the state tells us we can do.
Yeah. Okay.
And then let.
Well, I'm fine. Yeah, I can circulate that document to
That'd be great.
everyone.
Yeah.
and then we can just go from there.
Yeah, so we'll put the structure of the public hearing on the next agenda as something to discuss, so we can lay it all out at that meeting, so.
So I can envision that your kind of comparison that says this is the same, says, yeah, these are only 5 differences really that are different than what it is today for us. And then it's really the overarching piece that we
Yeah.
can address.
Well, there's that, and then there's also the differences that just come from being home rule that maybe aren't even called out in the charter.
Yeah, that's why, I mean, that really is
yeah.
the one to.
Yeah.
leave
Those
the
are,
stand
those
on.
are important too.
Yeah.
And the benefits of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's all I have.
All right.
You've been kind of quiet through that.
No,
Any other,
I'm all good. Thank
yeah, any other kind of
Quiet
discussion?
and straight. Really.
Questions, comments? I can't believe it. Wow, we really got through that.
Yes, we did.
All right. Well then, do I
Motion to
have?
adjourn.
Yep, motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, meeting is adjourned.
Nice work, everybody.